This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie. A mysterious object 5 million light years away has baffled scientists after transmitting signals that hit the Earth every 16 days. The phenomena known as fast radio bursts have been hitting the planet. Seth Shostak explains.
Hi, Seth Shostak here at the SETI Institute. You've been probably lying awake all night wondering about the latest news about FRBs, fast radio bursts, radio burps from the cosmos that were first discovered about a dozen years ago. Okay, so what are these things? You hear a little beep in your radio telescope. It's really short, about an eye blink in length, maybe a thousandth of a second, 2,000th of a second. The fact that it's so short means whatever's causing it has to be pretty small, and pretty small means, maybe less than 1,000 miles in size. That's small compared to something like, a star or something like that. Now, how are you going to figure out what these things are? The first thing you need to know is, where are they coming from? How far away are they? Well, in order to know that, you have to use different radio telescopes to try and zoom in with high resolution, great precision to say, oh, you know what, Ralph? They're coming from that spot on the sky right up there.
Researchers have found over 100 types of fast radio bursts, but only 10 of those have been seen to repeat. Astrophysicists discovered the pattern in the data from the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment radio telescope in British Columbia. 1 to 2 rounds of radio bursts will blast out per hour for 4 days before going silent for about 12 days. Then the cycle repeats. It has been suggested that this particular fast radio burst could be orbiting something else, such as a star or a black hole. A type of black fungus that eats radiation was discovered inside of Chernobyl's nuclear reactor. A number of fungi species are known to inhabit the extremely radioactive environment that emerged out of the infamous Chernobyl nuclear disaster of 1986. Scientists have documented around 200 species of fungi living around the ruins of the former nuclear power plant. Following the accident, fungi were the first organisms to pop up. Footage of 2 disc-shaped clouds with a third appearing was filmed over a city in Russia and shared on social media. Towards the end of the footage, a plane is seen heading towards the sky rings and pierces the first circle. Local media and witnesses state a 4th ring appeared shortly afterwards. Last week, a sighting of a cube-like UFO was shot by a commercial airline pilot over Colombia. A glittering snake-like UFO was filmed over Brazil. This is the Rogie Report News on the Fringe FM. I'm Jess Rogie.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift.
Contact, nice to be in orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
And our guest tonight is a speaker, musician, from the Resonance Academy, Jamie Janover. So if you've ever thought about the double slit experiment, which I know you guys do, you think about it quite a bit, right? You think about it all the time. If you ever thought about that and wondered what's really going on out there, are we living in some type of vibration? It doesn't seem that way, but science shows us it is. Jamie's here with us. Also, he's a musician too, so we're going to talk about some pretty cool stuff here in just a moment. Please don't forget to go thank our sponsors for the program. That's getthetea.com, also ancientlifeoil.com, and Metaphorical Archaeology. And if you are into ufology, which I know most of you are, head over to ufoseekers.com, backed and supported by the Fringe FM, and go check them out as well, because they're doing it right every day and night. So I wanted to give a big shout out to some of you guys that have donated to here lately, because I haven't thanked you enough. And I wanted to say, like, somebody sent me a message and was like, well, you should say when you give credit, say everybody's first and last name. Well, I understand what you're saying, buddy, and I just got your message, so I get what you're saying. But a lot of times I've tried that, and then they get even more bent out of shape when I actually say their last names on the air. So I don't really do that anymore unless I have to. So it's one of those things, better safe than sorry, right? So if you want, you can join the Fringe FM chat. It's over on thefringe.fm/chat, or it's on Discord too. You could just search the Fringe FM, and that's how you can find it. If you go on the website, which we're updating, by the way, so there might be a little, when you go to the website, a few weird things happening there at the Fringe FM. We're doing a lot of different things this year. We're bringing in a new team. We're going to be updating the show clocks, and everything's going to change. So when I say change, I don't mean it's going to change like totally. It's just going to change for the better. You'll see. And it's going to be more fun. We're also going to the Arkansas UFO Conference, the Ozark Mountain UFO Conference. This is the 33rd annual event. They're April the 10th. And so if you're in Eureka Springs, if you want to come out and see Whitley Strieber speak, or David Paulides, and I believe there's a bunch of speakers there. We're going to be down in the vending area. So KGRA will be there as well. And come hang out with us. It'll be fun. That's April the 10th, the weekend of April the 10th. So if you're in the South, come hang out with us. All right, let's get on with the show. This is the first time Jamie's been on the show, and I can't wait to speak with the gentleman. Now, he has long been interested in the intersection of science and all things considered philosophical and spiritual, and after years of investigating the subject, when he first came across Nassim Haramein lecturing at a music festival, the dots connected. And he's been delving even deeper into the world of unified physics and ancient cultures through the lens of Nassim and other theories ever since, sharing resonant information and multimedia presentations he delivers while on tour as a musician, and co-hosts the Ancient Origin section of the Academy's, the Resonance Academy's core course as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about, the Resonance Academy as well, too, as well as hosting his own online course in the Resonance Academy called It's called Ancient Egypt Revisited. Jamie has delivered more than 200 comprehensive presentations and a dozen weekend-long seminars on Nassim Haramein's unified field theory to date at events, conferences, and festivals worldwide in places as far-reaching as New Zealand, Egypt, India, Indonesia, Spain, Costa Rica, Australia, Portugal, Italy, Romania, Czech Republic, the Netherlands. Wow. He's been all over, man. He's recognized as a musical innovator and one of the leading people in these fields of studies of spirit science. Now, Jamie, man, it's good to have you on the program. There's a ton more I could say about you, but I don't think we got enough time, man. You've been busy, haven't you?
Well, in an infinite universe, there's an infinite amount of things you could do.
Right on, brother. Yeah, I get that. Sure. I was looking at something pretty cool, man. It looks like you're not afraid to do anything. I was watching this drum trike, and I thought watching you play that thing while you're going down the road was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. How long did it take you to build that thing?
Yeah, that was very instrumental in my creative process. You know, I showed up at Burning Man a long time ago and was like, "Oh, I see how all of you people are. Okay, I'll be back in a year." And then I was like, okay, now when I go to next time, I want to be able to see everything, and it's very big. So, you know, you're going to need to bike around if you want to see stuff. But then if you're biking around, you can't really do your thing very well because you're biking, and my thing is music. So I was like, how can I play music and bike?
Right.
And then I was like, oh, I want to mount my hammer dulcimer onto the front of my bike. And I play the hammer dulcimer as kind of my main axe. I mean, I started playing drum kit first, and then I discovered dulcimer, and I still play all sorts of percussion, but hammer dulcimer has been kind of my main instrument. So my original idea was like, let me put a hammer dulcimer on the front of a tricycle, and I'll ride around playing hammer dulcimer. And then I realized that is very difficult because you have, for my instrument, there's legs, 3 legs, and you have to mount the legs, and you have to start welding things. And I was like, I don't know how to weld. I don't even know how to start. And so I was kind of discouraged sitting in my garage, and I had, my percussion stuff. And so I like literally just took a percussion clamp and stuck a cowbell on the front of this trike. I'm like, well, at least I have cowbell. I was like, man, I don't want to just go around playing cowbell. I'd like to play drum kit, but how am I going to make a drum kit that's small enough to go on front of this trike? And then I started realizing, oh, there's that guy Trilok Gurtu, this incredible Indian percussionist who sits on the ground, doesn't have a real kick drum. He plays the kick drum with his hand by hitting a low-tuned rototom. So I was like, oh, I'll make low rototom kick drums, and I'll use a little 5-inch timbale and put snares on it and make that a little tiny snare. And then I'll get these little tiny 6-inch hi-hats. And then I'll put pickups onto the heads of these little rototoms and amplify it and pull a trailer that has a battery amp. And so I can hit this little tiny drum that has a big sound because I amplify it with this pickup. And so then I just figured out how to mount this thing. And I showed up out on the playa. And ever since, I've been bringing this drum trike. And then I later added a pyrocussion instrument, which is made by Bob Hoffman. That's fire percussion, and you hit a wire that goes to a valve that lets out propane when you hit this wire. So you can be very controlled about the patterns of letting out this propane. And of course, the propane is on fire. And so when you really push into that wire, you can make quite significant fireballs. And so I mounted that to the front of the trike as well. So it's basically hi-hat, 2 kick drums, snare drum, mini LP bongos to have toms, and then this wire that you hit to make the fire. And, you can find it online, I guess. There's videos of me riding around. Not a ton, but it's called the Realms Mobile is what I call it. But it's basically a fire drum tricycle, and you steer it by leaning back and forth on your chair, which turns the front wheel. So you don't need your hands to steer. And then I can actually just like play full-on beats, and it's become quite a vocabulary. I've been playing the kit as I just described it the same way for 20 years, and I put it next to me and next to my hammer dulcimer when I play music gigs where I'm able to like play beats with my little hammer dulcimer hammers on this drum kit, and then reach over and play melodies with the dulcimer with effects on it and delays. And so I can like express more of the musical ideas that I think of in my head at the same time, because I definitely think of the beats. Even if I'm playing melodies, I'm hearing and feeling the drum beat in my head. And this was a way for me to like play the drum beat and then actually play the melody that I hear while I'm playing the drum beat and get both of them going at the same time. So that's kind of a long-winded.
While you're driving the trike. Yeah, I was watching that.
No, I don't have the dulcimer when I'm doing the trike, but I'm just saying I took that design that I designed for the trike, and it became one of my main instruments that I have with me at all my gigs. Wow. So I play that miniature drum kit. I call it the mini kit, and it's literally just a tiny. I travel with it in my suitcase. So all those countries you listed off, I would like go play a festival at like, whatever, Rainbow Serpent in Australia or Boom Festival in Portugal. And then, I'm already there, and I have my drum kit in my suitcase, and I've got my hammer dulcimer that goes in the overhead bin. And so I can like fly and play all my stuff because it's so small. It's part of the inspiration of like making a drum kit really small is you can fly with it in a suitcase and plug it into a giant PA and hit this little drum with this little hammer, which is only like 6 inches long, barely touch it, and make a huge kick drum sub sound come out of the PA, like massive. Thanks to technology, right? You're just like, let's turn that up. Let's EQ out all the high end. Let's boost the low end. Let's compress it. And then all of a sudden it's just like ridiculously fat, which is incredibly satisfying because, you know, making a small motion make a huge sound. I don't know if you've ever played like a drum pad or a drum through a giant PA system. It's an amazing feeling to just go boop, you barely touch it. And it's like, boom, shakes the whole place, you know, and you're like, whoa, that's power.
No, I've never got to do that. I've never got to do anything like that. But
drummer and the bass player have a lot of responsibility when they shake the subs like that. Like, you better time.
Yeah, right.
Or everybody on the dance floor is going to look at you like, what are you doing?
But you know what? I am familiar with like electronic music, and was talking to a friend of mine about back in the day when we used to go to raves and stuff. And back then, I can really kind of understand what you're saying. I felt like I had, and I know a lot of people think, oh, you're raving, you're on drugs, but no, I wasn't. I mean, it was like back then I could really feel the music, so to speak. And I had a few spiritual experiences that I haven't had any like that and since that time. And that unified field theory that you're talking about is something I wanted to discuss with you. Is I think is a very real thing, and I feel like science is on their way to discovering this stuff, like mainstream science. We discussed it on the program a lot, and it's because of people like you that I'm hoping that we get their attention so we can get more scientists looking at it, you know. But I think that it has everything to do with why we're alive, consciousness, you know, how we communicate, everything. So tell me about how you got into this. I mean, you were just doing music and then you ran into Nassim, and that's how it happened, or did you always kind of know?
Well, it definitely started well before that. I think like almost everybody, right? I was like wondering, what the hell's going on around here? How did we possibly get here? How did all this stuff that I see all around form? Yeah. You know, the biggest questions you can ask. I think everybody eventually says, wait, the universe? What is that? Where did the universe come from? Wait, Dad, when you're like 5, Dad, how did the universe start? You know, what's on the outside of the universe, Dad, when you're 6 years old, you know? Right. I think we've all kind of wondered, like, and then you hear all the stories and everybody's got a different story, and science has a story, and within science, there's a whole bunch of different stories. And then there's religion and philosophy and spiritual people that have all kinds of different stories. And in the end, the answer is we don't know. If you're really honest about any question, the answer is I don't know. However, and then after that, however, boy, is there a lot that you can put there, right? Like you can just say, well, according to my guru, this is the deal. And my guru knows the deal. And so therefore, that's the deal. Okay, that's one way to go. Or, you know, my ascended master, whoever it is, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, all these guys, they have their story of like, okay, here's the nature of reality. Here's how all this stuff started. And everybody chose the way that they wanted to believe and their faith. And everybody has a different way. And that's awesome. And then much later, fast forward to only like hundreds of years ago, we were like, maybe we should try to figure this out in a different way, where we collect data and we have a hypothesis and we invented the scientific method. Phew. And then I'm like, you know, doing the Reader's Digest version of the Cliff Notes version of this. But
yeah, right.
Then we realized, oh, wait a minute. Now that we're trying to figure this out with data, maybe it's a little bit different than what the church was telling us. And then poor Copernicus and Galileo stuck their neck super far out. And they're like, yeah, Vatican, I know you're telling us that we're the center of the universe and we're like as close to God as you can get. It goes God and then us and then animals and plants. And there's this whole hierarchy and all this stuff. And everything revolves around us. And boy, you guys are coming up with this scientific stuff, this data. Let me collect some data. Hold on, I'm on the beach. Oh, wait a minute. The horizon is flat. And the sun goes away over there, and then it's dark, and then all of a sudden the sun comes up over there on the other side. So obviously the sun's going around us, and we're on a flat planet. And that was pretty much the deal. That was the standard model of physics for a long time. And then these guys dared to say, oh my God, you're going to say something different than the church? You're going to tell the church that we're not the center of the universe? Good luck with that. they almost got burnt at the stake. Like Galileo literally almost got burnt at the stake because he was like telling people that the sun was in the middle and we're going around the sun, not the other way around. And people were like not having it. They were not happy. Luckily, Galileo actually knew the Pope personally. And so the Pope spared him. But the Spanish Inquisition was not happy. They were about to like burn him. And today, you don't get burnt at the stake for saying stuff that's way outside the standard model of physics, but you might have some trolls make a blog about you and proceed to try to, diffuse all of your theories by clouding the waters with incorrect assumptions in physics and all this kind of stuff. And that's what's been happening, is that there's a standard model that pretty much most of the physics community agrees upon, and it goes into textbooks, and then you go to a physics university and you get a PhD and you read the existing theory, and your job is to add a little piece to the incredible body of knowledge that has been built up by physicists for hundreds of years. And that is very ingrained, that whole system. And then somebody like Nassim Haramein comes along, like Galileo or Einstein for that matter, and says some wacky stuff where people are like, what are you talking about, dude? There's no way that could be correct. Like Einstein came along and was like, yeah, you guys thought you knew how to measure space and you thought you know how to measure time. You kind of did, but the thing is that those aren't separate. It's together. It's called space-time. And people were like, what?
Yeah, right.
What are you talking about? And then they were like, who is this guy? Oh, he's just like a patent clerk in Bern, Switzerland. They were like, don't listen to this. Let's look at this paper. This guy is coming up with all this crazy stuff. He's just a patent clerk. And then Max Planck got a hold of these papers and was like, excuse me, hold on a second. And then he like goes to his colleagues, guys, check this out. They're like, what? They're like, you see these papers from this guy, Albert Einstein? Look at these equations. And they're like, oh no.
Yeah.
They're like, damn, that actually works out. That could be super duper heavy if that turns out to be correct. And then as a matter of fact, if he's correct, then the guy we were about to give the Nobel Prize in physics to is probably not correct. So we better figure out if this is correct. And so long story short, Max Planck was like, hey, everybody in the world, I'm a very, very, very respected physicist, and I'm here to tell you that this guy might be up to something. And then they said, okay, let's try to do some experiments to prove if Einstein's correct. Long story short, they proved that he was correct. And everybody went, oh, no. And they had to completely change all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, time and space was relative, and how fast things were moving depended on how fast the observer was moving. And then they took those equations and they applied that to small stuff that they discovered, and then it didn't work out at all. And they said, oh no, we have to come up with a whole nother set of math for small stuff that doesn't match Einstein's math. And so now in the standard model of physics, there's math for big stuff and math for small stuff. The math for the big stuff is Einstein. The math for the small stuff is called quantum field equations or quantum physics. And those sets of math don't talk to each other. And they're not exactly the same. And they're trying to unify the math of those two scales. And that's what a unified field theory does, is it's unifying the math of the big with the math of the small. And it's got to unify somewhere because, ready for this logic? Big stuff is made of small stuff. How about that for like a super easy way to try to explain to somebody? Like the math for the small stuff better connect to the math for the big stuff, because no matter how big something is, it's made of these little things called atoms. And those little things are made of smaller things, which are also made of smaller things, which are also made of smaller things. And it goes really, really small, like way farther smaller than you can possibly imagine, down to the very pixel size of our universe, which is theorized to be at the Planck scale, the Planck distance, thanks to Max Planck, who was the first to discover these little vibrations. It's the smallest vibration that the universe does. It's way, way, way smaller than a proton. As a matter of fact, there's 10 to the 60 of these little things that make up a proton. They're called Planck spherical units, which is like a little sphere, a little oscillator at a very small scale. 10 to the 60 means a 1 with 60 zeros after it. That's how many of these little things are in a proton. And that is the quantum field, otherwise known as the unified field, otherwise known as the ether, the plenum, the vacuum, space, mana, prana, chi, the source field, the quantum foam, the 0 point field, call it whatever you want, God, call it anything you want. We are made of and bathing in this infinitely dense superfluid-like medium that we commonly call space, but space is completely filled with these tiny little oscillators that are vibrating at a very high frequency. And so when you are raving, quote unquote, that is just a old school term for you went to a place where they played really organized vibrations called bass music with beats that made you entrain with a natural rhythm and pattern that is inherent to the very structure of space-time itself. And that's why music has such a transformative power over your emotional state. And your emotional state is the way that you interface your consciousness with the field that is consciousness. Consciousness isn't something that you are creating with your brain. Your brain is picking up consciousness in the field, in this quantum field, and your brain is more like a radio. And here we are on the radio. And I know it's internet radio now, but let's go back in time to radios. Looking inside the brain for consciousness is like looking inside of a radio for us. Yeah, like the listener's like, wait, where is he? I don't see him in there. No, he's not in there. We're not in the box. We're in the field. We're talking, and it gets broadcast over radio waves out of your little hut, and then no one can hear any of that stuff. They could be standing on the mountain on the other side of the valley. They don't hear anything unless what? Unless they get a crystal. If they get a crystal and they can get that crystal to vibrate at the exact same frequency as the radio station, then all of a sudden you can amplify that signal and make a little cone called a speaker push the air and make those magical invisible frequencies come out of the ether. And all of a sudden, oh, I can hear that guy. I hear what he's talking about. That is an amazing miracle of organization. Meanwhile, there's people all around the world being like, I'm bored. What am I going to do today? It's like, what? How could you be bored? If you realized how amazing it is that you can even think about the fact that you're bored, you wouldn't be bored. And so what's happening is we are bio-oscillating crystals that are picking up the field. It's called the unified field. It's called consciousness. It's called everything. It's vibration. And you have a very, very tuned system. It's called your brain and your entire nervous system. And the field that you emanate and that you pick up extends past your body. Wow. You can measure the electromagnetic field coming off of your body, from many feet away. And the heart has the most concentration of electromagnetic energy in the entire body, way more than the brain. And your heart is sending more information to your brain than your brain is sending to your heart. And you have neurons in your heart and you have neurons in your gut, and your entire nervous system is a giant antenna. And so when you rave or you listen to music or you meditate or you do, try to tap into more subtle realms, we'll call it, that's what you're doing, is you're tuning your biocrystal. Imagine if you could get your hands on the dial of the radio, because when you tune a radio, it's mostly static. It's like, and all of a sudden, doop, there I am. Here we are talking on this radio station, because you tuned your dial of your radio and made that little crystal inside the radio vibrate at the right frequency to match the frequency that you guys are broadcasting on. And so it's pretty cool to talk about this on the actual radio. Usually I'm talking about this on a conference or like some sort of video thing. But so on the radio, it's good to talk about the radio, I suppose, because we are basically little radio receivers, and we also transmit. So we're sending out the signals, we're receiving signals, we're sending signals, and people that are tapped in are very sensitive to this kind of stuff. Like somebody walks into a room and they're like, who is that? Either good or bad, right? But, everybody's got kind of broadcasting their own vibe all the time. So what are you sending out to the universe? What are you receiving? Because that's basically all that there is that there's two directions, in and out. There's no up and down, right or left or north or south in the universe. It's in or out from your current location. And we live inside of an infinite fractal universe that is holographic, which means that all the information of every point is embedded holographically so that the whole can talk to the part, and the universe can keep its coherency from the infinitely large to the infinitely small. And it could just be that we live in a toroidal universe, which is like a donut shape, where information is constantly going in and also constantly going out. And so from our perspective, it appears as if the universe is expanding, but it may not be expanding and expanding. It might be appearing to be expanding, but it's curling back in on itself. And outside of our universe is a much, 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 much larger universe. And outside of that is a much, 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 much larger universe. And so we live on the inside of the event horizon of a black hole called the universe. This is the theory that Nassim has put forth. And now we're finding that his equations predict with very high accuracy the cosmological constant, the temperature of the universe, the level of the cosmic background radiation, which is essentially Hawking radiation falling in to the event horizon instead of falling out. Hawking radiation is the radiation that Hawking discovered, and they named it after him, of virtual particles, matter antimatter, where these pairs of particles, one falls in and one falls out, and therefore he predicted that black holes would eventually evaporate, causing this major information paradox problem where information is not supposed to be lost. And it's because they didn't account for the fact that the space is full of information, that there is no nothing. There is no such thing as nothing. You can't have empty space. Empty space is not empty at all. It is absolutely filled with energy. And when you include the energy of the space into the equations, everything just works out. And all of a sudden, you don't need dark matter. You don't need dark energy. You explain this very tricky thing called the vacuum catastrophe, which is this crazy density gradient from the cosmological to the quantum. All these types of things get fixed when you include the field, the unified field, and the information and the density of the field in your equations. And when you understand that stuff, then it starts to make sense how and why, for example, that you can have things that mostly are considered to be paranormal, which I like to call normal, because it's just physics that we don't understand yet. Anything spiritual, metaphysical, or paranormal is really just physics we don't understand yet, right? Like if you went back in time with an iPhone to like Benjamin Franklin when he was flying that kite and the lightning bolt hit the key. Remember that story?
Yeah.
Can you imagine? They'd be like, holy mackerel, you're an extraterrestrial or you're the devil and we're going to burn you at the stake. Like, what do you mean? How can you FaceTime with somebody on the other side of the planet and talk to them on video? Like, we don't even understand what that lightning bolt is. And then it's like, well, Benjamin Franklin and people that don't understand electricity, there's an invisible field that you can't see, but it's all around you. It's called electromagnetism. And they're like, you're a ghost.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna burn you, right? Like, it's like, literally, you can imagine. And then they're like, no, seriously, we're going to figure out how to get this invisible field inside of our devices and make technology. And so it's like, yeah, now look, I'm talking into a MacBook Pro to somebody who's on the other side of the country, and people all around the world can hear me. It's like, we've come a long way from looking at this lightning bolt hitting a key. And that wasn't very long ago. So what are our cell phones and our computers going to look like in 1,000 years? I'm pretty sure they don't have keyboards. You know what I'm saying? So maybe there's some people out there that have like 1,000 years of technology on us, or 1,000,000 years, or 1,000,000,000 years. If there's a civilization with 1,000,000,000 years of technology on us right now, they could very easily be anywhere they want right now, listening to us in a ship right over our heads. We wouldn't even know, like the Romulans cloaking themselves. And then this is where you're like, wait, I thought we were talking about physics. Now you're talking about extraterrestrials. It's like Nassim Haramein is one of the very few guys who can write equations like these folks like Stephen Hawking and other physicists that are talking, very complex physics equations, and then in the next breath talk about the galactic family. And yeah, of course, there's other species out there. And like, talk about being a little ahead. You're sticking your neck out in 2020 when you start talking like that. I guess a little less than in 20 in 2000 when he really started talking about this, because that was before Ancient Aliens was on TV. Now it's more of almost a mainstream thought. But when you were talking as a physicist 20 years ago about galactic family, it made it so that Nassim got blacklisted pretty damn quickly by the physics community, because A, he was talking about stuff physicists don't want to talk about, like consciousness, like biophysics, like extraterrestrials, and all this stuff. And he's had a hell of a time getting his papers out there because of the educational system that I was talking about earlier, that is very much cemented in their process and the way that they review papers and all this stuff. I know I'm kind of just stream of consciousness going for a long period of time, but I just figure this is the way to lay out serious groundwork in getting out some of the most fundamental stuff right off the bat. But I want to let you like be able to ask questions and stuff. And
yeah. I'm just curious. Like, you're a pretty smart man. You know what I mean? I'm not saying, well, you're a musician, you can't be smart, but it's like you picked up on this stuff, man, and now you're touring and speaking, and you're working with the Resonance Academy, doing your thing, going all over the place. It's like, to me, I understand what you're saying. It's just like, I wish more people, dude. I wish there was something that we could do to get mainstream science behind it. And it's the one thing that I want the government to get involved in. And like you just said earlier, you can't talk about consciousness. Why not? It's a real thing. Why can't we?
Well, you can now. You can now. That is changing, thankfully. And there are some great papers that have come out, including papers that Nassim Haramein and biophysicist William Brown have written. And I can point people to the Resonant Science Foundation website, which is resonancescience.org. Resonance, like, resonating, like a bell, resonancescience.org. And there's a tab at the top where it's science, and then you can go and click to the papers and read the original papers that they wrote. There's quite a few of them, and they're not always they're not written for the layman, a lot of these, but that's my job really. Is I'm not a physicist and I'm not a mathematician. I just can tell a story about something that makes sense, and this stuff makes a lot of sense. And if once you have somebody like Nassim explain to you what the equations mean, and you assimilate talking about it, then you can start to really solidify it in your own head, and then you can explain it to other people. And I've just been doing this for a long time. I saw him at a festival. Fast forwarding back to like my process of just seeing Nassim after reading a bunch of books about this stuff and being like, oh, this guy's connecting way more dots than some of the other books that I've written. And I asked him if I could explain it to people, because I didn't want to mess up his theory. And he was like, actually, I'm going to teach people at some point to do presentations on my work so I can stay in my lab and write more papers and not go around explaining the stuff I already figured out. It's more productive for him to like make technologies based on his theories than it is to, go explain the stuff that has been working on for the last 30 years. So that's kind of my job, is to just be an emissary, an ambassador of sorts for the information, and learn how to talk like I'm talking on this call. And I can talk like this, literally for just hours and hours for days, because I do weekend versions, and I'm just going super broad, but like I could have talked this long on one small topic because it's holographic. It goes down infinite fractal wormholes. And that's basically the structure of the universe. These little Planck oscillators are all connected to each other. The proton has 10 to the 40 quantum wormholes coming off of its event horizon, connecting to 10 to the 40 other protons. And the atoms all connect through this quantum wormhole network. It's called entanglement in quantum theory, and it's called Einstein-Rosen bridge in the cosmological scale. And it all boils down to, the entanglement that you've heard about, the superposition, and like you were alluding to, the double slit experiment. Everything's connected by literally wormholes, like straight out of Star Trek, like for real. where a black hole doesn't just disappear into another dimension, quote unquote, whatever dimension is. That's a whole nother story. The information is connected. All the black holes are connected. And it turns out that the proton is a black hole. And Nassim has the math to prove that that's correct, which means you are made of quintillions of tiny little black holes spinning at the speed of light right now. And so when the ascended masters of the planet were talking in this very esoteric way before they invented science about how you are a being of light and you're made of light, they were talking physics. And they didn't have the physics to back up those statements, but that's essentially true.
Yeah, they kind of figured out everything's like photons now. Like that's what everybody's talking about. Photons. That's light particles. That's what everybody talks about now. Light particles, the double slit experiment. The only person I've talked to other than you on the program that's really saying, well, yeah, that's like the basics of it, but there's way more going on here was Thomas Campbell, who's a physicist. He came on here and but it was more about the out of body experience and what was going on there. And he did say what you're talking about. He said it was just different, a different frequency that we think we're going out of body, but we're not. We're just changing frequency, so to speak. And I was trying to wrap my head around that. I'm like, well, how come I can see myself sleeping if I'm just changing frequencies? It gets complicated.
You are going out of body, and essentially because you're just able to look at the whole picture from a different perspective. And like I was saying before, the energy field of your body, like the physical border of your body, if you will, your event horizon is your skin in the material world. But you have to remember about how many frequencies are passing through us right now. As we walk around in a city, for example, the number of frequencies of television stations, radio stations, neutrinos, all kinds of muons are flying right through the entire Earth and not even interacting with the atoms of the Earth. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff happening, right?
Yeah.
So it's not too far off to imagine that somewhere in there you can tune your consciousness or tune your radio set to be able to bilocate or see a larger sphere of your field and not be confined to the border of your body. We're constantly emitting frequency, and we run at 100 degrees almost for 100 years. That's a lot of energy that we're pumping out constantly. We're always breathing. All these chemical changes are happening in our body, billions of chemical changes per second. We're losing millions of cells per day and growing new millions of cells every day. It's an unbelievable process. So it's a little, kind of box thinking to think that you couldn't, have astral projection and stuff like that. Because thinking outside the box means that you're creating a box where there's no boxes. There's no boxes in a hollow fractographic universe. It's just boundary condition, inside boundary condition, inside boundary condition, like Russian dolls to infinity in both directions.
Gotcha. That makes total sense. Yeah, because I've talked to so many people, man, so many experts on the subject, and they all think different things. They all think, well, no, it's all just one unified field of consciousness, which I get that. But when you go out of body, we're moving in this unified field. And if I could see myself sleeping, then there has to be energy involved. There actually was only, like you're talking about, right? There was only one guy that came on here that talked about the energetic body plus the scientific stuff with the out-of-body experience, and it was Robert Bruce, but he got a little bit more esoteric. He brought up a lot of occult stuff, which is something, I was going to ask you about. Now, you've traveled a lot from your experience. The ancients, they knew all about this stuff, didn't they? I mean, they know all about it. Somebody
because
did.
Here's the thing, is that inside the proton, the little tiny pixels of our existence, you can think of it. A spherical pixel is technically called a voxel. Okay, so the voxels of our universe, like the pixels on your screen are little technically square, sections of your screen, and you have enough of them, then you get a resolution and you can read text, even though it's only made of these little dots.
Right.
Basically, everything in the entire universe is made of these little dots, and there's different configurations of the little dots that make up the little dots. So in the case of a proton, for example, there's 10 to the 60 of these little things, and they're spherical waveforms, and they perfectly pack together. And if you perfectly pack together spheres, the way that they connect is through a very specific geometry of a tetrahedral array, a bunch of tetrahedrons packed together. So you have a bunch of tetrahedrons all stacked together, and then you put a sphere around each tetrahedron, and then they overlap each other. And if you were to shine a light through this structure onto a flat surface, you would get this pattern that you've seen a million times called the flower of life. The flower of life is the fundamental pattern with which the quantum vacuum fluctuations that make up the proton, therefore make up atoms, therefore make up molecules, therefore make mass and matter, that pattern is the fundamental pattern of our existence. And the flower of life symbol you find all across ancient civilizations around the world. So yes, the ancients knew very specific geometric information that has to do with the geometry of space-time itself. Because space-time is in a perfect equilibrium state because the geometry itself is so perfect in every possible direction that it creates a vector equilibrium, an equilibrium in space that we call nothing, because this super duper duper dense medium is in a perfectly balanced state. And where it's not balanced and there's a slight change in density, it starts to spin. Just like in the Atlantic Ocean, if you have one air mass that's one temperature, and then another air mass comes along that's only a few degrees different temperature, and it butts up against that other air mass, what happens? That stuff starts spinning, and boy, can it spin hard. It's called a hurricane. And how much energy is inside of a hurricane? Unbelievable amounts of energy. And why was it caused? By how much of a change in density? Very slight change in density, like 3 degrees Celsius. That's not very much change in the density of the air, and it caused all that power. Now, look at the quantum vacuum and how dense it is. Very, very dense. Now look at the cosmological density, the vacuum of space in between galaxies style. Not a lot of matter out there. It's not very dense. That's why there's 122 orders of magnitude difference in between the vacuum energy density and the cosmological scale vacuum density. And that whole problem is such a big problem in physics that they gave it a name, literally the vacuum catastrophe. It's basically a catastrophe because they have no idea how to resolve that. And now Nassim Haramein wrote a paper with Dr. Amira Val-Baker called Resolving the Vacuum Catastrophe, a Generalized Holographic Approach. And that paper was published in the Journal of High Energy Physics and Gravitation and Cosmology. And you can find that paper at resonancescience.org in the Science tab, and then click on Research Publications. And in that paper, they address the 122 orders of magnitude discrepancy, and they resolve it using a generalized holographic model, where the universe is holographic, and it's speaking to itself at all scales through this quantum wormhole network. And they have the math to prove it. So here's the thing about going esoteric and into the occult. I am all about that stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
Let's talk about all that stuff. But in the end, how is that working? I want to know the mechanics. I don't want to just have faith in anything. Give me the physics for it. And that's where I'm very grateful for Nassim, because Nassim is not afraid to talk about consciousness or astral projection or extraterrestrials or anything, but he'll look at it very carefully and analyze the math and the physics of how that's possible, not just take it for granted. So all the way down to something like the Great Pyramid of Giza. You look at the Great Pyramid, and the Egyptologists will tell you all day long all this evidence that it was Khufu, the pharaoh, that built it, and it was a tomb for him. And you start doing the physics on it. Oh, really? That's an interesting story. Let's start doing the physics. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if you're a pharaoh and you want to build the Great Pyramid because you want to be buried in there, you better finish it before you die, right? And human beings only live for so long. And at that time, the adult males in Egypt were living to around 45 years of age on average. And so Khufu was estimated to have about 22 years to build the Great Pyramid. And so Nassim's like, oh, great. How many blocks are there? 2,330,000. And how many hours are there in 22 years? I'll just give you 24 hours a day. Let's just assume they were working 24 hours a day, all night, never stopping for 22 years. you would have to lay down one of those stones like every 6 minutes. So I don't think your story, thank you, anthropologists and archaeologists, for your cute story that you just made up. The physics do not pan out on that. And that's a good place to start, because, like, boy, are there stories in anthropology and archaeology that they just pull out of nowhere and, like, just start talking. And you're like, wait a minute. Where are the hieroglyphs that explain that Khufu built this? There are none. Are there any hieroglyphs on the Great Pyramid? No. And so you start going deeper into just that one building out of all the buildings on planet Earth. And then you realize, wait a minute, the story is way more complex and goes way farther back than we were ever told. I literally remember being in school and having teachers tell me that, you know, human beings were very primitive and they didn't really know what was going on. And they started making stone tools and crawling out of their cave. And then eventually they discovered agriculture and started growing food. And this all happened like 10,000 years ago. And then you're funny. Like, excuse me, thank you. Like 2013, they discovered Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, right, which is 13,000 years old, and it's gigantic pillars, you know, megalithic stones that got moved, and they obviously had to have agriculture going already by then. And so the dates just keep getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And then we're like, oh, whoops, we were mating with Neanderthal. We're actually all like 1 or 2% Neanderthal right now. Boy, that's a different story than what we were told when we were kids. It's like unbelievable how quickly that's changing. And so the same problem that you have in physics, where the standard model of physics was kind of cemented in place, has happened in the out of Africa hypothesis with, you know, human beings originating in Africa and migrating out. That has already been disproven. And, like, man, the whole story is so much different, and it's happening across the board. And so it's going to happen in physics, in biophysics, in AI, in consciousness studies, in psychedelic drug studies, in extraterrestrial studies, in all the paranormal stuff. And then all the hard sciences are having to change their whole thing, because Nassim's predictions on his equations predicted, for example, the charge radius of the proton, and it was 4% different than the standard model. And then physics accelerators in Switzerland confirmed that Nassim's prediction was correct, and that the proton is 4% different than the standard model thought. And the standard model is falling apart at the seams right now. And so the physicists and all these other disciplines that are affected by physics are starting to look into these more subtle realms and realizing that Nikola Tesla was right when he said that if you really want to understand the secrets of the universe, you have to talk about frequency and vibration. And thanks to Einstein, we know that energy and mass are the same thing, E equals mc squared. But really, if you look at that equation, what is that? It's energy. And what is energy? We don't really know. If you ask a physicist, what is energy? Where does it come from? They don't have an answer for the source of energy or the source of electricity. They just know how to describe it and what it's doing. So you're like, okay, energy equals mc squared. That's mass times the speed of light squared. So you're like, energy equals mass. Okay, what is mass? We don't really know where mass comes from or what it is. We know all mass is made of atoms, but we don't really know where the source of mass is. And so energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. What is the speed of light? We know what the speed of light is, fairly close. Why is it that speed? We don't really know. So E equals mc squared really translates to I don't know equals I don't know times something that I know what it is but not why squared. So even so, that is a very, very important and very powerful equivalence in physics. And it unlocks all kinds of knowledge that you know that the frequency and the mass are the same thing. And so if you really want to understand the universe, you have to go into these realms of frequency and vibration. And here we are on the radio doing that very thing. Yeah. But our brains are doing that on another biological scale, where thanks to the water molecule and the tetrahedral arrangement of water molecules matching the geometry of spacetime itself, the quantum vacuum information of the unified field is able to be translated through our biology thanks to the water. And we are able to, take protons in through our mouth, called food and water, and get energy from it and keep running our bodies at 100 degrees for 100 years. We're unbelievable, feedback mechanisms for the universe to learn more about itself. We are the universe telling the universe about itself right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what Bill Hicks said when he stood up on stage, right? We're all, do you remember, I don't know if you've seen that bit where he's talking about we're all just consciousness experiencing itself. This is all just a ride, If
you tap in and you're correct and you're tapping into what's actually going on, everybody's going to come to a similar conclusion and describe it in a similar but different way. Makes
very
sense.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, we wow, yeah, this is cool. Cool conversation so far. We do have to take our first break, but yeah, this is pretty interesting. If you got a question, you can definitely call in at 1-800-588-0335, or you can jump right in the Fringe FM chat too. I'll be looking out for that as well. We'll be right back. Stay with us. More Lighting the Void coming up.
Let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com. Or to speak with a trained consultant, give Angioprim a call at 954-882-7221. That's 954-882-7221.
You can tug all day long on a carpet that's been glued to the floor. Then you hurt. There are many strong glues out there. Let's see, there's liquid nails and Gorilla Glue. You ever try to remove 3M 5200? That adhesive is strong. Then there's bathroom caulk, silicone rubber, adhesive tape, super glue, flex tape, and stickers. Graffiti. Scientists have come up with glues that stay stuck and can't be removed. Until now. Until Handyman Formula by DeBond. That's right. 95% of adhesives become unstuck when you spray Handyman Formula directly on them. Just spray, wait a few minutes, and remove. It's amazing. Most adhesives become unstuck when you use Handyman Formula. Visit DeBondCorporation.com or MCMaster.com. Call 561-575-4200. This stuff really works. Handyman Formula by DeBond, a great Christmas gift.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy and gross. Bugs, I hate bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. I know. I use Orange Guard. Plus, all of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It promotes a healthier planet, and here's a bonus. Orange Guard cleans where it's sprayed. Plus, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard.
You can get Orange Guard at Ace Hardware. And listen, folks, Orange Guard is tougher than bugs, and it's safe to use. Go to orangeguard.com. That's orangeguard.com.
to Lighting the Void. Jamie Janover is our guest tonight, and boy, that text in that I just received is perfect. You know, this has been a fascinating conversation so far. So I just got a text in that says, what does it say here? Because it was perfect. Let me pull it up here. You can text in too if you want to on 501-777-5631 is the text in line. Let's see. What did he say? It was perfect. Oh, there it is. He said this. He said, "You said it yourself, Joe. Don't pretend you know, because you don't. The guest has just humbled all of humanity, but perhaps that is our salvation." Very good point, sir. I don't know about all that, but yeah, a very good point. So Jamie's with us tonight, and tell me about Jamie if you can. The website for reference too is jamiejanover.com, but if you can, Jamie, tell me a little bit about the Resonance Academy and what y'all are doing there.
Yeah, Resonance Academy is part of the Resonance Science Foundation. It's a foundation that Nassim Haramein set up originally in 2004, and it's basically a mission to spread the knowledge of unified physics, a unified view of the universe, merging all the sciences and all the other traditions of the planet, and acknowledging, that every tradition, every science has knowledge and truth, but it's all absolutely connected. And a lot more comes out of science, I think, in general, when you have this broad approach and you don't go deep down into only one discipline. So Resonance Academy is a place where there's a community of people from around the world that are having ongoing discussions and sharing information and sharing their own work, while at the same time learning the fundamentals of Nassim Haramein's unified field theory and the work of the other Resonance Academy faculty, which includes the research team that Nassim has put together over the years, which includes people like biophysicist William Brown, astrophysicist Dr. Amira Valbaker, another physicist Olivier Allereau, and a bunch of other folks like Alan Green, who's a great cryptographer and discoverer of encrypted information in the works of William Shakespeare and in the geometry of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And then another great researcher and mathematician, really a polymath, named Robert Edward Grant. And I work with him as well as part of a research group that he's put together. And we're actually doing a trip as part of the Resonance Academy. We do annual trips around the world to ancient sites. And we usually do these large trips. This one is a little bit smaller, more intimate trip. And we actually leave for Egypt in less than 2 weeks. So on the 21st, I'm flying into Cairo and meeting up with Robert Edward Grant and Alan Green and a mathematician, Talal Ghanem, who's from living in Toronto, and then Adam Apollo and Robin Davis. And all these folks were going to do lectures from the hotel in the morning, and then we're going to go out onto sites in the afternoon and into the evenings and explore the Great Pyramid, the pyramids at Dashur, the Red Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid. We'll go to Saqqara and Abu Gharaib, and we'll go to the Sphinx, and we're doing the Osiris Shaft, and hopefully we're going to get into some places that people don't usually get to go. And this is because Nassim Haramein was tapping into the foundational geometry of space-time and connecting the work of a lot of different people, including folks like Walter Russell and Nikola Tesla. And then Robert Grant separately on his own kind of had a kind of an awakening to this deeper realm of stuff and started drawing all this sacred geometry. And eventually somebody was looking at his notebooks and saw what he was doing and said, "Have you ever heard of this guy Nassim Haramein?" And he said, "No." And so he got introduced to Nassim, and they realized they had a real synergy in their work. And so long story short, now Robert Grant and his whole research group are collaborating with Nassim Haramein and his whole physics research group. So it's like mostly mathematicians collaborating and geometers collaborating with physicists. And I was able to be in on a meeting that happened, it was like about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now, an incredible meeting of both of these teams together at Nassim's lab, and they were going deep into specifically the geometry I was describing before about the flower of life, but also the geometry of water as it freezes and forms ice crystals. It's in resonance with the geometry of space-time, which is hexagonal / tetrahedral, forming 3D vector equilibriums called cuboctahedrons. I don't have really a good way of going into all that on the radio without visuals, but basically they were connecting a very fundamental ratio of the volume. Are you ready for this? This is new information that's not even in any papers yet. Alan Green figured out that if you take a sphere and you put a cube around it and it perfectly goes around that cube, there's a relationship of the volume of that sphere and the volume of that cube. And that ratio you can write out to 20 decimal places. And then he looked up that ratio, and it turned out it was already a mathematical constant. It's called Lieb's constant, and it has to do with how water freezes and forms ice crystals. And so separately, Nassim's team was working on this and the freezing of ice crystals. And Alan Green, as part of Robert Grant's group, found this same thing. And so they connected the dots on that. And there's some exciting physics that's going to come out of this group. So I encourage you guys all to check out the following folks. Robert Edward Grant, it's robertedwardgrant.com. He's Robert Edward Grant on Facebook and Instagram. And then Alan Green, and he goes by Bard Code on Facebook and The Bard Code on Instagram. And his work is absolutely fascinating, and I won't have time to go into it, but he's decoded the relationships of all of the mathematical constants and our measurement systems just out of the proportions of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So I'm very excited to go to the Great Pyramid of Giza with Alan, and we're going to go look for what we think, or Robert and Alan think, that might be more hidden chambers inside the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh, man.
So there's a great video you can find on YouTube on Robert Edward Grant or Alan Green Bard Code's YouTube channels, and it's called The Real Da Vinci Code. Check out that video, The Real Da Vinci Code, on YouTube by Robert Edward Grant and Alan Green. That video is only about 4.5 minutes long, and it'll just blow your mind because they figured out that Leonardo da Vinci's Vitruvian Man image, the very famous picture of a human man with his arms and legs apart, and then a circle and a square drawn around him. One of the most famous drawings in human history.
Right.
That drawing is actually encoding the geometry of the Great Pyramid of Giza. And they go into great detail how that works. And he even outlines where there's potentially more chambers. So I'm excited to go to Egypt with Resonance Academy later this month. And we're doing a live virtual access to this thing where you can sign up to follow the trip, and we're going to do some live streams of the lectures, and then we're going to record a bunch of the footage of us going to these sites and put it up on this website so that people can follow from home.
I totally believe that,
and,
too.
You can find that again at resonancescience.org.
Because it's like everything that I studied, and I'm not a super proficient in sacred geometry, or even, it's hard for me to even keep up in the seam sometimes, but I have studied the occult, and specifically, Western occultism. And, back then they considered it like the devil or whatever, but these guys were tapping into, they called it magic or whatever, but I'm sure they would call a cell phone magic if we went back into the 1800s and took it back there. But I mean, these guys were tapping into everything like that. They were tapping into the Kabbalah, which was, you've seen the Tree of Life. It makes up, that glyph makes up I don't know how accurate it is, but I've seen it where it makes up the flower of life, so to speak. And then,
it does.
These guys were saying, look, if I do this in this realm, or if I focus on a point, or if I draw pentagrams, and if I do it enough, if I train my brain enough, and then I get into the drama of the ritual, which kickstarts my emotions, and I blend this stuff together, it causes manifestations to happen. In other words, these magicians were figuring out how to broadcast signals for specific things to happen in their lives. And it was really just a hidden science that we still haven't discovered yet. But guys like you are on their way to doing it. But still, when I talk about it, there's still some people that, they get all jumpy about it. They think it's the devil or whatever,
Right. And that's going to always be the case, and it's okay. Not everybody needs to be on the same page at the same time. That's kind of how biology works. And I think our job, instead of being like trying to convince them they're wrong, or, certainly not to like disparage anybody's beliefs, it's to like empower them to, go through their own discovery process and to have empathy for everyone having their own point of view and letting them pray however they want. Like, I would love to get this word out of this unified physics to the fundamentalists of all the religions, because right now in each religion, most people are awesome and are peaceful, and religion teaches everybody to have tolerance for other people, love others as one loves themselves, all that kind of thing. But then there are some people, not a very large number of them, but some of them are very vocal in each religion. You could call them the fundamentalists, call them whatever you want, that basically are like, you know what, my book and my tradition say it's like this, and that's pretty much the deal. And if you don't agree with that, I'm not very happy. I'm like maybe so unhappy that I might actually get violent.
Right, yeah.
And that is very unfortunate, to say the least, because as it turns out, like you were mentioning, you go to the Kabbalah, the Kabbalistic tradition, then you check out the Christian tradition in the Bible, then you check out the Torah and the Jewish traditions, and then you check out the Quran and the Islamic tradition, and then you check out the Mayan calendar, and then you check out the I Ching and ancient Asian traditions, and you're like, wait a second. All those books and all those traditions are talking about the same geometry.
Yeah. Exactly.
And they just talk about it in a different way and encode it in a different way, and they do different things. But guess what? They're all talking about the same thing. And sure enough, Islam and Judaism and Christianity have the same holy ground, all overlapping each other, because it all came out of the same source, fundamental information that was Egyptian before that was Sumerian before that was something before that goes way farther back than any of us realize. And we're all branches of the same tree. And so guess what? Everybody can stop fighting right now.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Wouldn't that
right?
be awesome?
Yeah,
that's what I like. I mean, I'm on the mission. I want to create a, where it's like we celebrate styles of faith like we celebrate styles of music. You can have a festival with bluegrass and dubstep. It's okay.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah.
The dubstep kids are not at the bluegrass stage, and the bluegrass kids are not at the dubstep stage, but they're not shooting each other.
But I mean, you're right. I mean, like even all the ancient rabbis or the Holy Kabbalah, those guys, that wrote the Sephriat Sirah came out of Spain actually, but still, when it's talking about all, the Hebrew letters and everything, it's just an interface for a code. It's talking about geometry. It's talking about the double cube is what the Sephriat Sirah is talking about.
It's super literal.
Yeah.
Like the great name of God that you just mentioned in Hebrew is Yud-He, Vav-He, otherwise known as Yahweh.
Or the Tetragrammaton.
And you weren't even supposed to say those letters. Like, don't even say that, because it's the holy name of God. You're not even allowed to say it. But what you were allowed to say is this word known as Tetragrammaton.
That's right.
Really? Tetragrammaton means God or Lord in the Bible. I mean, tetra means four, or, or a tetrahedron. And then gram or gramma is the root of grams, so it means weight, and it's also the root of grammar, so it means language. So you could translate the word God into tetrahedron gravity, which is basically a tetrahedral array. And then it gets better. You write those four letters inside of a Pythagorean tetrachus, otherwise known as a tetrahedron or a triangle. So you've seen pictures where there's a triangle with the four letters Yud-He, Vav-He written inside the triangle, and each letter represents a different number. And when you add up the numbers of those four letters, it equals what they call the great name of God, which is actually the number 72. And you're like, 72? What does that have to do with 72? Oh, it's encoded. That's only half the information. If you want to make the geometry of space-time, which is a tetrahedral array, and you need at least 64 tetrahedrons to see 2 octaves of this perfectly balanced geometry that is the balanced geometry of space-time itself. To make a 64 tetrahedron grid, you need 8 star tetrahedrons put together. Star tetrahedron, otherwise known as a Merkaba or Merkaba, which is a tetrahedron pointing up and a tetrahedron pointing down put together. And if one tetrahedron is 72 and you put it together with another tetrahedron that's 72, you add them up and you get 144. And then you've heard about in the Bible the 144 faces of God. But the 144 faces of God are how many open faces there are on the outside of a 64 tetrahedron grid. So the Bible is talking about the geometry of space-time as deduced by a unified field theorist in 2002. That does not seem like a coincidence to me.
Yeah, so how did it get there? That's my question, right? How did it get there?
Maybe the information of this came not from our Earth. It came from off of our tetra, meaning off the Earth. Extra tetra real information, extraterrestrial.
Yeah, you know how you were talking about the Vitruvian Man, right? I was talking to Richard Allen Miller about this, and in Revelations it talks about the kingdom of heaven, right? He says the kingdom of heaven is. He talks about the walls and the size and the shape of it, and it's that as of a man of an angel. If you draw that, that's pretty much the Vitruvian Man. But if you draw the cross and then you draw an angel and then you just kind of trace around it, and you got what do you got? You got a pentagon. And it's got 12 sides, and the length and the width and the breadth of it were the same as the Bible says, right? And all the faces had each tribe on it, which represents, the zodiac, obviously. But when you put it together, it's a 3-dimensional dodecahedron. Now, how did a dodecahedron get in Revelations?
12 around 1 is alluding to the fact that a vector equilibrium known as the cuboctahedron, this is what Buckminster Fuller coined the vector equilibrium. It's a single point with 12 radial vectors coming out from the one point. And when you connect all the edge vectors are the same length as the vectors coming out from the center. So every line or every vector inside of a cuboctahedron is the same length. That's why they call it the vector equilibrium. And Jesus had the 12 apostles. And that is a metaphor for the geometry of space-time itself. Now, this is where you have to be sensitive to the fact that I'm starting to maybe reinterpret some information in a different way than a traditional Christian tradition would say Jesus was a real person that had real 12 people. But if you start looking at the traditions, you realize that Jesus is the same story as Mithra, is the same story as Krishna, is the same story as a lot of folks that were born on December 25th, and they went away for 3 days and came back, just like the sun does when it moves down to the horizon on the winter solstice, and it seems like it doesn't move for 3 days, and then it turns around. And so there's a lot to this. And again, I could talk for 2 hours just about the Bible, or just 2 hours just about the Great Pyramid. I mean, it goes deep, 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 but all this stuff is connected, and the tradition is encoded in all of the books of all these traditions. And so I feel like we could heal a lot of stuff with unified physics. Ironically, unified physics could be a key to stopping religious wars. And it's hard to see on the outside when you just say it like that, but I've been talking about this for a long time, and I've had people come to me after long presentations and tell me stories about their life and their change of thought over long periods of time, and interpreting things that they were told and they assimilated in one way and now see it in a new perspective. And it's very healing, I think, for people to get affirmation that their tradition was correct. But guess what? So are a lot of other traditions. They're also correct. Just like good music is good music. It doesn't matter what style it is. You can pray however you want, and you can connect to your own personal singularity in the center of you however you want. You can meditate, you can play music, you can ride horses, you could do a bunch of stuff, right? Art and all these things are expressions, and it doesn't matter. It's all good. So let everybody be how they want. Let them have their hair the way they want. We're still doing weird stuff oh, you guys believe that, and so we don't like you, and we don't like how your hair is. We're going to make you cut it off, and you can't go to school unless you cut your hair off because we don't like your hair. I mean, this stuff has got to change. And when you get a bigger perspective on things and you go to the core of how matter and energy works, then I think you have a lot more empathy in general, and you're like more tolerant, because you're like, oh, it's infinite. It's an infinite fractal. Anything can happen and we can create anything. It's like unbelievable what is going on Earth right now. And
imagine that, though.
Not everybody's on the same page. So like you said, you ruffle feathers when you talk to a fundamentalist. They're like, oh, don't you reinterpret my book. I'm not going to be happy if you tell me the Quran or the Bible or the Torah is not exactly the way I say it is. And thankfully, I think the numbers of those people are going down, and the number of people that are like really tolerant and letting people pray however they want are going up. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to make it and that things are going to get better. But man, I feel like we're in the dawn ages. We're not quite out of the dark ages yet. It's the getting there, almost into the light, but not all the way there yet.
Yeah, well, I personally believe that we can thank the Rosicrucians themselves, the people that get talked about, you know, like they're so evil or whatever. But if you pick up the Golden Dawn, the front of the book shows a Merkaba. It shows exactly what you were talking about. It shows the sacred geometry in there. These guys were writing all this stuff down back in the day, and I believe that it started way even before Rudolf Steiner. All the secret societies that had to hide and study this stuff before so they didn't get crucified, basically. Now, the story of Jesus, I think, was based like half on a real story about a guy named Yeshua that did go to the Egyptian mystery schools. And then the Rosicrucians kind of said, how are we? I mean, think about it, man. If you, as smart as you are, if you went to, I don't know, a primitive society and you were trying to explain this stuff, how would you do it? How would you do it? You would have to adhere to their emotions, probably, number one, and make up like mythologies and stories and then embed that stuff in there. Right.
And then Da Vinci went to Egypt for 4 years and brought this knowledge back to the King of France. And then it got passed down only 100 years later from the King of France to John Dee, who was actually William Shakespeare. And so there's a whole lineage of this stuff that goes from way, way, way back, pre-Babylonian. We're talking pre-cataclysm. Because the real story is that there was an advanced civilization on this planet that was squashed by a cataclysm that happened roughly 12,500 years ago. And right now we get told that history goes back, 3,000, 4,000. But if you really want to go way back, you got to talk about the Sumerians 6,000 years ago. And it's like, yeah, that's not very old. Because now we're finding evidence that there was advanced civilizations building megalithic sites 13,000 years ago, near the end of the last ice age. And so the whole story is going to get rewritten over and over. And whatever we think is correct now is going to get older, and our understanding is going to keep going deeper. I think that 2,000 years ago and what happened at the beginning of our current calendar is very, very, very recent history.
Yeah.
And that there's a very long history that is completely missing because all the evidence is gone except megalithic giant stones, which can sit there for tens of thousands of years and not decay and not rot or vaporize or whatever. Like anything written down that isn't just stone tablets is gone from that era. And so we have no way of knowing except for stories that got handed down and became mythology and became all these stories. But, we find like old maps where they knew where Antarctica was before Western civilization discovered it. I mean, your listeners, I assume most of you guys have heard of Graham Hancock. If you have not heard of Graham Hancock, you got to read all of Graham's work that very much ties together with Nassim's work. And Nassim is a big fan of Graham. And, and Nassim's been on his website featured and wrote a part of the introduction to one of his books and all this. And so it's very important to go deep into the physics, go deep into the anthropology and the archaeology, the study of the ancient history of religions, and tie all these things together because they're not separate at all. And spirit and science is the same thing. And trying to separate those things is doing a disservice to both of them. You got to realize that spiritual stuff is actually physics and that you can't have anything spiritual without the physics. And that really is hard for spiritual people to hear. They don't like that. They're like, I can ascend without a ship. And it's like, well, you can ascend sort of yourself, but if a wave comes, a tidal wave, you better get off the surface. You need to you need gravity control, because like the universe does stuff, the tidal wave's not going to stop because you're meditating. And so there's a dichotomy there where you have to have the spiritual ascension and then you have to have the literal ascension. And you can't actually have gravity control without having an appropriate level of consciousness. And so that's where I think we're headed. We're getting our consciousness tuned so that we can make these resonant technologies that used to exist on this planet, but then were lost. And they get encoded into these books in different ways. And in the Sumerian tablets, they call it the black sun, which was like a little star, like a black hole in a can.
Right.
And in the Quran, they call it the black stone. It's the thing that's supposedly inside the Kaaba, that giant black cube that you have to go to Mecca once in your lifetime in Saudi Arabia and do a circular vortex around 7 times if you're a Muslim. And then in the Bible, that object is called the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. So the Ark of the Covenant, the black stone, and the black sun in the Sumerian tablets might all be the same object, being described in different ways by these different traditions. A galactic type of technology that had an understanding of being able to control this invisible field called gravity, just like we figured out how to control this invisible field called electromagnetism. And I'm talking into a MacBook Pro and you can hear me thousands of miles away.
Yeah, using light to transfer the binary code. Think about that too. Like we figured that out on a small level, fiber optics, using light to transfer information. But I'm just incredibly frustrated with it. I mean, when you talk about Graham Hancock, you can tell, man, like he's done a lot of talks. He even does a conference here in Arkansas at the Crystal Vortex thing where they don't allow any media in there. It's like $600 a ticket to get in. It's almost secretive here. Because of the scrutiny of it, because of the way it's like the separation here in the South is still pretty big. Honestly, I got to be honest with you, man. It's not like California or Portland. I've been to these places. When you come down here, you got to pretty much like hide. You got to go to these other places or Eureka Springs. And I feel like sometimes that maybe we should have more people like you that are willing to stand up in front of a crowd of not just people that are going to these places, but we need people that are willing to stand up in front of a crowd of everybody and say, hey, let me tell you a story real quick.
Well, I appreciate that you're doing that. I mean, that's what we're doing right now. And because it's on the internet, it could go to anyone. Somebody's wacky aunt could forward this to them, right? Yeah. And they're like, oh, my wacky aunt's sending me a whole UFO program again. But then they listen to it and they're like, but wait a minute, that actually kind of makes sense. Maybe I should look into this. And then they start vortexing into Google and reading some of these articles from folks like Graham Hancock and being like, wait a minute, that makes sense. This reminds me of, it reminds you of the dream that you had. And then it reminds you of this other thing. And then they go, wait a minute. And then they're off to the races. And then years later, they're like, gee, thanks, crazy aunt so-and-so. You did a good thing by turning me on to this guy who turned me on to this other guy. And now here I am at this UFO conference or whatever. Like, it happens all the time. So I'm just basically long-windedly just giving you mad props for what you're doing right now and that you're helping this whole process right now by doing this show.
Well, I think there's a big difference in what you and Nassim are doing. But I also think there are people out there, and I'm just going to mention it really quick, that the reason why Aunt so-and-so doesn't take us seriously is because we've got other people out there that are in this for the imaging, just the imaging alone, the marketing, the money, and they make up whatever story and move on. And it hurts. That hurts people, man. That hurts the work of Nassim. It hurts the work of Graham Hancock. It hurts the work of real investigators,
Every industry has these people.
I understand, man, but ours is real bad, and it's like, how do we get taken seriously by anybody? I mean, that is in every industry.
The way you get taken seriously by everybody is you write mathematical equations that can be proven out in physics, and then you do experiments that verify your mathematical equations are correct by saying, look, check out this device that's not plugged into anything, that's emitting energy. How is it doing that? It shouldn't work according to your physics, but according to my physics, there's so much energy in space itself that if you could just get the energy to come out of the space and put it into your device and get it to express itself, you have unlimited amount of energy. And guess what? They're already doing it. So thankfully, all the people that are muddying the waters with stuff that's not correct, it's all going to work out because people are going to be like, here, why is this working? And then the physicists are like, I don't know. It shouldn't be working. But yet it is.
Yeah,
Look,
right.
I'm powering my house off of this thing. Oops. And in the old days, the people that had the inner knowledge and the power were easily able to squash people like Nikola Tesla because there was only one of him. Now there's thousands and thousands of inventors, thousands of researchers, thousands of spiritually tapped in people on a more esoteric level that are all tapping into the same fundamental source field of information and understanding the dynamics and the structure of that field, and then therefore able to manifest stuff in 3D in, their consciousness and in terms of technologies like physical devices. And that's what's going to really level the field. I think that the noise will eventually drift down. And look what happened in society with the way that change is happening. For such a long time, women couldn't even vote, and African Americans were slaves. And then we realized that's probably not such a good idea. Maybe we should change that. Okay, good. Now we've changed that. Now it's now gay people can get married. Now people can smoke pot. And so there's changes happening in a good way. It's just glacial in some ways because you want it to just happen overnight. Right. But really, when you look at the big scope of things, in my brief lifetime, I can't believe how much change I've seen. And so it's going to work out. It's just going to be a little messy because there's always what you would call the fringe that is pushing the envelope. But really, the fringe just means that you're near the event horizon of a boundary condition and you're merging with the bigger sphere that boundary condition is in. And so that's how you expand and how you grow. That's how evolution works. It's how consciousness works. It's how the universe works. The universe is just basically a feedback mechanism for itself, teaching itself about itself and becoming more complex, and then doing that again and doing it again and doing it again. And so here we are trying to figure out how the hell all this stuff works. What the hell is going on? That's what this show basically is what is going on? Because I was told a bunch of stuff, but then there's all this stuff that doesn't match at all what I was told as a kid. For example, what is that ship that's flying in 90-degree angles in the sky? How are they doing that?
Right.
Right. And boy, is that documented. I mean, you can't really quickly go into that, but
yeah,
there's a lot of evidence that there's advanced technologies out there and that there's other beings out there and that there are people that have various degrees of direct connection to those folks, and they should be called people, by the way, because we're probably the aliens. They've been around way longer than we have.
Man, you're so right about all that. That is, I got to catch up on you guys' work, man, because this is the kind of stuff that I'm a little bit more, it lines up directly with the occult stuff that I've really studied. But anyways, yeah, we have to take a break here, but we'll be right back. Hey, you guys also don't forget too that we're going to have, what is it? The Valentine's party, right? It's not a party. It's a date. It's an auction date for the Night Stalker. So if you guys want to get involved with that, we're only going to have so many people that are going to be able to bid on that. So make sure you get involved. All right. Make sure that if you really want to date with the Night Stalker, Friday the 14th, that's when you're going to do it. I'll tell you about a little bit more about that because we're actually going to auction off an e-date with one of our news guys here for Valentine's Day. If that ain't fringy, I don't know what is, right? We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Yahoy there. This is Gigi from Shift Happens. And holy shit, you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Hey, don't you dare turn that
stick. In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station. Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now, this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
I'm Clyde Lewis. You are listening to The Fringe FM.
This is Rev Dan Lopez from Spiritual Warrior Today Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Hey, this check is wrong. I worked a holiday and 7 hours of overtime. Not getting paid correctly is a real pain. It could also hurt our boss if our company provides out-of-compliance checks. That's right, construction companies doing business with the government can get fined, or officials of the companies can go to jail if the checks aren't right. It's a law. The Davis-Bacon Act has 30 compliance issues for every check, but there is an easy way for construction companies to be in compliance. EMARS offers Compliant Client, a web-based system that finds and corrects all 30 of the possible out-of-compliance check issues. Users of Compliant Client report an 80% savings in time and money. Running a weekly payroll usually takes about 5 minutes. All 15,000 plus clients of EMARS have never had a legal compliance issue. Plus, they sleep better on check day. Contact EMARS at emarsinc.com or call 480-595-0466.
Every Saturday at midnight here on The Fringe FM, you can join me, Stephen Canby, the host of The Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of The Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited.
Join us on The Midnight Hour Show.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of GI Joy at getthetea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's getthetea.com. Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. Tonight we're here with Jamie Janover, and man, I'm telling you, I wish I had hours and hours to talk to you, sir. Like you know exactly what you're talking about, man. You're tuned in, you're tapped in, and I like talking to people that are tapped in, because it's not just, I mean, you're a musician. That's the cool part about it. You're a musician, but you're tapped into all of this stuff. All of Nassim's work, even more. I was talking to him during the break about some of the stuff I've learned from Rosicrucian magic, and it just seems like everything just adds up, man. You know what I mean? Like when everything just starts all adding up that way, you can't help but look at the big picture and say, man, you know, this is it. This is the key. It's sacred geometry. It's light. It's sound. It's resonance. It's the science of consciousness. And this is what everything is. Like you said before the break, there's no separation between spirit and science. We just believe that right now until we really dig down and we find out that it's all the same thing. And that's what you guys are trying to show at the Resonance Academy, right? I mean, that's what this thing's all about.
Yeah, unified physics, unified science, that it is all connected, and that you can actually, connect it literally with the science and find those hidden connections. And that's what we're going to do on this Egypt trip, where I'm going to be talking about space-time geometry and ancient civilizations. Robert Grant will talk about mathematical constants and number theory. He's figured out some incredible patterns. He discovered a pattern in prime numbers, for example, which has incredible ramifications for stuff like encryption, which is involving factorizing prime numbers. And Alan Green is going to talk about the relationship of different measurement systems being expressed by the Great Pyramid of Giza. It turns out that if you just even draw the flower of life and draw geometries like a hexagon and a pentagon, and the pentagon and the hexagon share a side, so it's the merger of the 5 and the 6. Talk about the ancient mystery schools. This is what it was all about. And in biology, that's very much a common molecular bond that makes DNA, for example, is the penta and hexa coming together.
Wow.
Well, if you draw these geometries just with a simple compass and a pencil, you can draw these geometries and then draw lines within the geometry and call one of those lines a foot, and then draw another line at a different angle, and the length of the line that was a foot in relationship to another line is the exact relationship of the foot to the meter. So it's connecting the imperial measurement system with the metric system. And then there's another line you can draw that represents the relative length of an ancient sacred Egyptian cubit, which is the measurement system they were using to build the Great Pyramid. Yeah. So it turns out that our measurement systems are not arbitrary at all. It wasn't some king measuring his foot saying this is a foot, and it wasn't the French at the end of the French Revolution in the late 1700s inventing the metric system and saying, okay, the distance from the North Pole to the equator is 10 million meters, and we'll make 1 meter or 1/10 millionth of that distance. That wasn't just invented then either, and the cubit was not just invented in Egypt. It goes way back. All those measurement systems are related to each other, and they're all connected. So it means you can now convert any measurement into any measurement. Because, for example, a kilogram, which is a measurement of weight, is a cubic meter of water. And so it's related to the meter, which is a length. So you can relate now kilograms to inches, for example, or, joules to Kelvin, or, like temperature, distance, compass measurement.
It's like the glue,
system.
right? It's the thing that puts
All
everything
measurement
together.
systems are actually fundamentally related to each other, and it relates to the flower of life geometry, which is, again, the geometry of the quantum vacuum fluctuations that make up the proton. So it's all literally connected. And now these guys that I've been fortunate enough to be working with and translating their information, these guys are all cracking the code. I actually do the social media for Nassim Haramein and Resonant Science Foundation and Robert Edward Grant and Alan Green, all of those guys. I do social media. So I spend quite a lot of time assimilating their work and coming up with posts to try to explain this stuff, either, in text and pictures, or I'm linking to their work on their websites and sharing articles and related stuff and all that. And then I go out and do lectures. But I'm very fortunate to get to go travel the world. I've gone with Nassim to Egypt and Peru and Mexico, and we did a lecture together on a small adventure in Croatia on a small ship. It's been all kinds of great adventures, getting to hang out and learn directly from Nassim and kind of, learn how to do his presentations and.
Well, it sounds like you know what you're doing, man. It really does.
I'm
sounds like you know what you're doing.
I'm explaining layman's terms because I'm a layman. I don't write these physics. I can't write these equations. I don't do the math. Somebody explains, here's these equations, and this is what this term is, and this is what this means. And then I just learn how to explain that stuff.
Yeah, I understand that. And that's what the show's all about, actually. Before I explain that, though, I want to take this caller. I don't know how long he's been waiting here. It's 410 area code. Sorry about that. You're on the air with Jamie Janover. Who are we speaking with? Hello. Well, I guess we're not speaking with anybody. Are you there?
Hello?
Yeah, that's you. Who are we speaking with?
Okay. Hi. It's Fee. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Fee? What's on your mind? You got a question for Jamie?
Yeah, I actually have a ton of questions, but I don't want to take too long, so I have one here.
All right, what is it?
I guess is the most important to me. So it actually has to deal with the Schwarzschild proton. From what I can tell, the idea of that is to unify the gravitational and strong forces. Is that correct?
More or less, yeah, because what they're saying basically is the strong force is not a separate force. The strong force is actually gravity operating at the quantum scale.
Okay, so I did a quick calculation, and setting the I pretty much found the mass of the proton that would be needed in order to counteract the electric force between two protons to hold it in the nucleus and replace the strong force, essentially. And I got a value that's 18 orders of magnitude greater than the actual value. And I was just wondering if there's something I'm missing there. Is it more than just the electric forces and the gravitational forces? Is there something else in there, or to account for that increase in mass?
My guess, and I'm not a physicist, but I'm guessing that the discrepancy might have to do with mass dilation, which is that...
What is mass dilation?
Mass dilation is that if you take mass and you spin it near the speed of light, the mass goes through the roof.
Oh, right. Okay.
And the reason that the standard model says the proton is like super duper duper light and has very little mass is because they're only able to measure what's expressing itself on the outside of the event horizon. And they're not considering that the proton is a black hole spinning at the speed of light. If the proton is a black hole spinning at the speed of light, then the gravitational effect drops off very quickly. It drops off within 1 Planck spherical unit, which is 10 to the minus 33 centimeters. And gravity, as you know, drops off at the square of the distance. And the strong force drops off super duper duper fast as soon as you get off the event horizon of the proton. But that's because this proton is spinning at the speed of light. When you spin stuff at the speed of light, there's this thing called mass dilation where the mass goes through the roof. And so if you include the mass of the Planck spherical units on the inside of the proton, and there's 10 to the 60 of them, and you compare it to the number of PSUs or Planck spherical units that express themselves in a flower of life tiling pattern on the event horizon of the proton black hole, 10 to the 40 of them, that ratio of 10 to the 60 to 10 to the 40 is the gravitational field. And if you calculate if two proton-sized black holes are spinning around each other at the speed of light, and they're black holes, what would be the strength of their gravitational attraction? The number comes out to the exact number of what we measure and call the strong force, which is actually just quantum gravity.
Okay. All right. I'd have to look into them, see if I can take account of that. But I don't want to take up any more time.
It should be fairly explained inside the Schwarzschild proton paper. And for people that want to go find this paper, it's resonantscience.org, and in the science tab under research publications. And then you scroll down and find the Schwarzschild proton. Came out in 2010. It's published by AIP Conference Proceedings.
Does that help you out, Fee? What are you? Well, I don't know. You're doing stuff in your lab there, probably, brother. I didn't even think about that. You're like the perfect person to call in for this show too. So, yeah. I wish I had more time to take more of your questions, but I'm sure if you follow their work on their websites and the links and stuff, that you'll probably find some pretty interesting stuff there, Fee.
I also want to point you to a Reddit AMA that they only did a few hours ago. If you go into Reddit and you search r/holofractal, HOLO fractal, man, if you're interested in the physics on that detailed of a level, if you go check out Reddit r/holofractal, it's a subreddit. They just did an AMA. The link is kind of long and has a bunch of underscores on it. But basically, I think if you Googled Nassim Haramein Reddit holofractal, you'll find this page. And man, there are very, very detailed questions and very, very long detailed answers to all kinds of very specific physics questions and some fairly esoteric stuff as well. And it's not just Nassim, it's Nassim and Dr. Amira Valbaker, William Brown, Inez, I forget how to pronounce her last name. Inez, I don't want to butcher her last name. Another incredible physicist, a doctor in physics, and then Olivier Allerol, who's also a great physicist. All five of those folks are responding on this Reddit AMA that happened just this afternoon. So I highly recommend that to all your listeners. Again, it's subreddit holofractal on Reddit.
Fantastic. Thank you for your call, Fee. Right. I appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Thanks for
thanks for the question.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had more time, and I got to tell you, man, I usually don't admit failures on air, right? But I was I thought I'd prepared decently for the show, even if something went wrong, but no, I was ill prepared for this, brother. I should have, and like being able to talk to you and your camp, I should have been on this all day long, because now all I want to do is, talk to you more, and I know you got to run. So it's, if you please, thank you for spending time with us here on Lighting the Void. I really appreciate it. And on the station, the Fringe FM. But can you give out the main links and links to the school for all of those that are listening now? But we'll also leave the links in the podcast, but if you don't mind to give them out.
Yes, the Resonance Academy. Again, you can find it at resonantscience.org. And I'm Jamie Janover. I've got website jamiejanover.org. It's not very, .com. It's not very updated, but I'm very active on social media. So find me, Jamie Janover on Facebook, JJ Janover on Instagram, and Jamie Janover on Twitter. And you'll find a lot of links to a lot of this stuff. I do a lot of posts. Also check out the work of Robert Edward Grant, robertedwardgrant.com. And Alan Green goes by Bardcode on social media. His website is tobeornotttobe.org. And Nassim Haramein and Resonant Science Foundation. And we'll be in Egypt February 23rd to March 1st is this virtual access to this trip, and you can find it on the events calendar of resonantscience.org.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Jamie, for coming on. And
thank you. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, man, no problem. Hopefully we can have you back one day when I'm more prepared in the mind. I'd actually love to have you back. So
you're prepared. You're always prepared.
Yeah. Thanks, brother, for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right, guys, that was Jamie Janover. Visit all the links he just mentioned, the Resonance Academy as well. And then we're going to have some more stuff. I'm going to talk to you about what I know based on what he said with the occult stuff. So you can look at that as well. And we'll leave all the links there to you because I know you guys are going to want those links as well. We'll have that for you as well when we release the archive. All right, so we'll be right back. More Lighting the Void coming up.
Let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com. Or to speak with a trained consultant. Give Angioprim a call at 954-882-7221. That's 954-882-7221.
You can tug all day long on a carpet that's been glued to the floor. Then you hurt. There are many strong glues out there. Let's see, there's liquid nails and Gorilla Glue. You ever try to remove 3M 5200? That adhesive is strong. Then there's bathroom caulk, silicone rubber, adhesive tape, super glue, flex tape, and stickers, graffiti. Scientists have come up with glues that stay stuck and can't be removed. Until now. Until Handyman Formula by DeBond. That's right. 95% of adhesives become unstuck when you spray Handyman Formula directly on them. Just spray, wait a few minutes, and remove. It's amazing. Most adhesives become unstuck when you use Handyman Formula. Visit DeBondCorporation.com or MCMaster.com. Call 561-575-4200. This stuff really works. Handyman Formula by DeBond, a great Christmas gift.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy and gross. Bugs, I hate bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. I know. I use Orange Guard. Plus, all of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It promotes a healthier planet, and here's a bonus. Orange Guard cleans where it's sprayed. Plus, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard.
You can get Orange Guard at Ace Hardware. And listen, folks, Orange Guard is tougher than bugs, and it's safe to use. Go to orangeguard.com. That's orangeguard.com.
That's my man Chronox from Belgium. You can visit Chronox's music at chronoxofficial.com. All the links are there on the website. We try to leave as many links as we can for all of you guys. But yeah, I'm just, Dan Lopez is here with us, by the way, but I'm just so, it's one of those times when I do a show that I get so tossed by what the guest has said that I can't think straight, man. Like I can't perform because there's so many things that he's talking about that I'm seeing in these books, Dan. When I say books, I'm specifically talking about most of the Western occult magic books that I see that are based on the Kabbalah. They're based in that system. And it's almost too exciting to me. It's the first time that's happened in a long time. I think the last time that happened on the show, I forget who was on here. It might have been Adam Apollo. I don't know if you remember that show, but these guys are doing some serious work, man, and we need to get behind this. The Resonance Academy, we need to really, really get behind this, because I think that what's going on here is going to be the answer to a lot of our questions when it comes to the mysteries of the Bible, the occult mysteries, the mysteries of consciousness, everything. I'm not saying the guys, Nassim and these guys and Graham, they got all the answers and all these physicists to have all. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is the information that they are putting out is explaining just about everything to the T. And if you can't see now that there are codes in the New Testament, like if you're listening and you happen to be religious, that's great. I'm all for it. But if you can't see that now, you're probably never going to see it, because there's just too many perfections in there. I don't know. Dan, are you familiar with Marty Leeds? You know who I'm talking about? The guy that does the gematria stuff. He's had a YouTube channel out forever. You know what I'm talking about?
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not all that clear. But I do know the gematria stuff that you were talking about, but only recently, too.
Yeah, so Marty Leeds, like this guy, it can pretty much shows you all the codes in reality with numbers, not geometry, not physics, just how all the numbers are adding up to the point. I mean, he does it so well. I need to have him back on the show, but he shows it so well to the point that there's no denying that we're living in something. You can call it a hologram, a computer equation, whatever you want to call it. The perfection is there. None of this happened by random chance, number one. So the atheist model, we just need to get that out of our head. And then number two, the religious thing is, I'm not mad at religion, actually. I'm grateful for it. I'm not so, because I get all those messages about how I'm anti-Christian and all this other stuff, which is total BS. But I'm not so proud of the fact that how we've treated mankind with religion, right? How we've killed each other over it. I mean, it's killed more people than anything. I don't know how long that's going to last, that statistic, because now we're killing each other over oil and trade and stuff like that. But when really these guys, man, they wrote this stuff, especially, I would say, the New Testament, especially the people that wrote the Kabbalah and any of the mystery schools, they wrote this stuff using these stories so that you could just see it. Like, if it's hard to explain this, but if I had read the story of Daniel to a 7-year-old or whatever, to a 5-year-old, 7-year-old, they think, wow, what a great story, right? And we all went to Sunday school, or we all went to preschool. A lot of us did anyways, not all of us. And we heard these stories, and there was a moral to the story, and we learned about God and Jesus and all this stuff, at least I did. And then you get older and you start asking questions, and you realize that your parents, the preacher, your friends, not only can they not answer your direct questions because you're using your mind, they don't want you to ask them. And it's still that way where I'm from, but it's not as bad as it used to be. And then you start seeing the codes for yourself, and you start saying, okay, there's something going on here. And that's pretty much my story. I came from a Christian background and found the science in the Bible, pretty much, the numbers, the math equations, and everything he was just talking about. specifically the geometry. If you pick up any text, the ones that I know about specifically are like the Golden Dawns and the Rosicrucians, but I would ask you guys to look up this stuff. Like, just do a Google search, use your search engines, and look up the Golden Dawn book by Israel Regardie. You can look up all of the geometry in there. You can look up the dodecagram, the dodecagon, the dexagram, the decagram. You can see this. Also, do a phrase search for the Vault of Adepti, which was the inner Rosicrucian society who used a temple called the Vault of Adepti, which most people don't really know to this day, unless you're actually a member of that society, what types of rituals go on in there. But you can blatantly see that it's made up of geometry. It's made up of complex geometry, right? It's got the flower petal, the rose in there. It's got every geometric pattern inside that vault. It's almost trippy. It's kind of psychedelic when you look at it, because each of the walls have zodiac symbols on them in flashing colors too. So they made this vault, consecrated it, put their energy into it, used the flashing colors and the symbols to trigger their subconscious, used the performance of ritual to tap into emotion, which is what we're learning from Joe Dispenza, our recent guest, and everybody else that's talked about this stuff, is that emotion is the motor that charges the broadcast for what you're going to manifest in your life. That's why when you fear something, that's why when we say don't give in to fear or don't be afraid, as real fear puts out a real broadcast. And you know what? It doesn't really matter what you believe. If you're an atheist, Christian, scientist, or whatever, tell me for a fact that when you fear about something and you obsess over it with your mind, especially if you do all three, right? You get really scared about something, you obsess over it, so you're focused on it in your mind, and then you talk about it, and then you keep doing it. What ends up happening? You manifest exactly what you fear. This is why we can't get past our own way. We let our experience not tell us our truth. I mean, we could just use our experience and it would tell us more truth than what a lot of dogma has. I don't want to get on too big of a rant here though, Dan, but it's like, this guy is
too late.
They're tapping into everything, man. And they're going, everybody that goes to these conferences, a lot of them do to learn. I do too. But for the most part, the people that go there are already open-minded. They're already seeking more knowledge for what they already know is going on. How do we get this message to the people that don't know? And I'm not talking about the stubborn people, Dan. I'm not talking about the people that aren't going to listen no matter what, but there's a very subtle thing that happens, I think, to somebody once they get out of high school. They go out into the world, they try the world out, and a lot of times they end up either going back home or something don't work out. Then they start asking their big questions in the late 20s. Most of us do. Those people that are looking, I mean, I would give anything if we could just funnel all those people to places like the Resonance Academy or the Monroe Institute. Or just say, hey, man, here's what I want you to study. Like, study the Bible, magic, science, and then metaphysics, Nassim Haramein. And once you get done reading all that, then come back and tell me what you think. And it's all there. Now watch. I think I got this thing figured out. Then it's going to be like golf, It's going to be like the next hole.
You got it all figured out, Joe?
No, hell no. These guys are talking about equations, man. Like, I can't get into the equation stuff. He said he couldn't either, but Fee come on here and started spitting out all this stuff.
Oh, say that. As far as like, he was all into it, but that's where he lives, Yeah, that's where Fee lives. He's all up in that stuff.
He's got some kind of experiment going on in his room. You know that, right? He's doing something big he ain't telling us about. I know he is.
I wouldn't want him to tell about it.
But no, I'm not saying I know it all.
I got an idea of what he's going on about, but yeah. Listen, the only way that you could do it is the way that it's been done. And, only those who are willing to hear it are going to be the ones that are going to hear it. You know what I mean? But you got to do it by telling stories. You got to do it by, the same way that it was done in the original, parables,
Damn.
You got to hide the information. You can't really just come out and say stuff like this in grand, broad audience, it's that'll be accepting. Because not everybody's willing, not everybody's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have been told that I'm too direct. Like, hey,
everybody's there.
I didn't know that was possible. But now that I know that you're a triple fire sign, I do know you understand what I'm saying.
Right?
You get it. But you're also older and wise enough to know that you got to kind of ease your way in, right? Sometimes, but it's just funny to me, man. Look. I grew up listening to my dad and my grandfather yell at each other over what they believed about the literal version of the Bible. One yelling at the other saying he's going to go to hell, while the other one's yelling at the other saying, well, you don't know what you're talking about. And this would happen during holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever. They always had these arguments. And if I mentioned anything about metaphysics, magic, the occult, mysticism, oh God, I'm going to go to hell. Now, this is when I was a kid. Now I'm almost 40 years old. My grandfather refuses. He found out that the Old Testament's full of pagan symbolism, not the Old Testament, but the New Testament, full of pagan symbolism. So he no longer says Jesus Christ. He don't say the word amen. They don't celebrate Christmas anymore, because they got this thing in their mind like, oh, it's false now, so it must be evil. Instead of looking at it saying, oh, there's hidden messages in here. Maybe I should figure out what that is and not judge it. Why does it take that generation 40 years to figure that out? And it takes, I guess, people in our generation, like, I don't know, 3-5 years maybe. What's going on there?
Joe. Everybody's different. The society changes. You know what I mean? Society changes. The one thing that I was, it's extremism to just close off and he feels like he's betrayed. That's number one. So he's going to need to get, let the dust settle on that one. And that could take a while, especially, once your faith is shaken, forget about it. But I don't think the information is really there to shake anybody's faith. It's really just to make them seek harder.
Exactly.
Seek harder. Well, if it ain't this, then what is it? And if it's this, then, okay, so change your mind. It's the greatest thing that you have, it's the greatest power you have is to change your mind. Doesn't mean you have to stay, nothing means you have to ever stay stuck in a belief, in a thought, in a point of view and a perception. Change your mind.
You know why I think a lot of people, once they see like the information's right in front of them, and they see that they could be wrong, no matter what proof you show them, whatever. I think the reason why they stick with it or they just throw everything out is because they become afraid. I think that's what it is. They become afraid that everything they've put
wouldn't
there.
You, if your faith was shaken, wouldn't you be afraid?
Well,
that's what everybody, all of a sudden you're hit with the unknown and you find out that the unknown is true.
But what do
we do? It's natural for us to fear the unknown, but it's just something that we got to get through.
There's a picture.
A lot of people don't want to freaking face the unknown. They don't want to deal with the pain of, facing the unknown.
But why does it got to be pain?
I know I didn't.
You know what was painful to me, man? Like sitting in church. listening to how evil everybody was. Maybe it was because I grew up Baptist, you know? So when I found out there's a bigger and better picture out there, that there's more stuff going on that actually makes sense, I got excited about it. I was like, finally, something. It doesn't mean God don't exist. It doesn't mean Jesus didn't walk the face of the earth. It doesn't mean that he didn't die for your sins. It doesn't mean any of that. I mean, it could be all of it. That's what I thought. I damn sure didn't get scared. The only thing that scared me was the simple minds of the people that I was around. They're dangerous, man.
They are.
Especially when they group up. I mean, we're not talking zombies here. You know, you watch a movie full of zombies and they can't think. They just stick their arms out and, you know, they come at you and they fall and die, right? Or you can just, you could fight off a zombie one at a time, but not these people. These people, you know, they have somewhat of a brain, more than most animals. They refuse to look at anything more. You can't talk to them. And if they all get together, they're going to come get you. They're going to get you out. Like when I had the, let's just say during an election, and I don't want to talk politics here. I'm just telling you how it is.
You just started.
Well, I'm just telling you how it is here. All right. Look, I had a damn, vote this person in the yard, which I'll never do again. The only sign that was of a different color, it's almost like Crips and Bloods, you know. They tore that thing apart, man. They threw garbage in my yard, dead animals. These are all, quote, Christian folk, by the way.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm stuck. I'm in he called it a hut. Wasn't that funny? Jamie. He said, you're wherever you're broadcasting your radio from in your little hut out there in Arkansas.
You call it a hut?
It's a shack. There's a difference between a shack and a hut. It's like a radio shack, man. I'm gonna have to start posting pictures so people don't think it's a damn shanty here. It's not a shanty. I mean, it's 1,200. Let me tell you how this is. All right. So you guys don't, I know the picture looks like a wood hut. That's what it looks like. The truth is out here on the property, we built this 3-car garage, this huge 3-car garage, massive, for a 3-car garage. And I took the third part up and, plumbed it from the road, put in the plumbage and sewage, all that. Put up some walls in here, so I walled off the third part of it. Wired the walls, did all the wiring and electricity, sheetrock, everything, done everything in here. So I have a 1,200 square foot box out here. This is the studio, by the way, so just so you know, it's not a hut, with 12-foot ceilings, which really sucks when you got to heat this thing in the winter. And in the front area, there's a living room with a TV. I've got satellite TV. I've got the internet. I've got a phone. And
so it's a third of a hut.
Yeah, in the middle, right? In the middle part of the hut, there is the studio, which is big. And then in the back is where I do all my meditations and stuff, you know. That's the part, that's the secret area that we don't talk about. Yeah. That's my lab. There's an alchemical lab back there. Let's put it that way.
Your altar.
Yeah. So pretty much it's like
your shrine.
Got your face. So it's like, it's nice out here, man. You know,
it's nice. I know. I'm going to be out there soon. You'll see.
Yeah. Are you coming down here for real?
Frick yeah. Are you kidding me? I got to go down there anyway. I might wind up down there. Let's see. I got to shoot down to Ohio in May for a get together. So I might just shoot down from there.
Well,
we'll see.
If you do, stop on by. But
yeah, buddy.
But I'm just saying, I get excited when I hear people talk about this stuff, and then they can prove it mathematically and scientifically. And then you go back to what people call the evil occultists and magicians, and you realize that all they're really doing is tapping into a bigger science. There's really no big bad devil on the other end trying to get them.
Yes, there is.
Did you say there is?
Yes.
Well, come on now. But but it's fun. It's fun to learn that stuff. Mm-hmm. So the next time he comes on, man, I'm really going to pick his brain. I might have to get Fee on here to really go at him, But it gets perplexing too, because I got this new tarot deck that Nish recommended. Now Nish is going to be doing a show on the Fringe FM. I believe it's going to be called Nish's Cosmic Salon. And it's going to be a cool show. But the tarot deck that she recommended for me was the Tarot of the Holy Light. And I think somebody posted a picture about that. But I've never learned more about the tarot than I have from this woman, Christine Payne Towler, who goes back, all the way back to when the tarot first started. And the Rider-Waite deck that we look at with we have the astrological correspondences and the Hebrew letters and all of the stuff that represents the paths on the tree. It gets complexing after a while, because if you look back when the tarot first came about, they were adjusting the correspondences as they went along. So there are some frustrations with this stuff. Don't get me wrong. Even like when you study astrology, you got Western astrology, and then you got Eastern, and you've got sidereal and whatever, and it's all different science. So which one's right and which one's wrong? And then you can ask, I don't know how many experts in the field of astrology or tarot, and they'll say, well, I don't know which correspondence is wrong, right? Just use whichever one works for you. I've always hated that when people say that.
Why? Do you think it can't be blanket?
Well,
why would it be blanket? Everybody's different. Everybody's born on different days. Everybody's born in different parts of the world. Everything's different, man.
No, well, I'm talking about the Western, and you do know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac are two different. They still use the same signs and all this other stuff, but they get into this big fat argument about the precession of the equinox and where the energies really are. Stuff like that, right? So there has to be a way. There has to be a real answer here. And so that's why I got into the tarot, actually. I got deeper into the tarot because, astrology didn't make sense to me in that way. Only to find out, as soon as it's just like golf, man. As soon as I think I got an answer, I don't. Only to find out.
Take the drop.
Yeah, take a mulligan.
Take the drop.
All of the correspondences I learned in tarot are pretty much the evolved correspondences. That's what I'm going to say, evolved. I'm not going to say wrong. I'm going to say evolved. Like, if you take, I don't know, the card Justice card, right? That usually corresponds with Libra. Everybody knows that. You can go on a million places on YouTube and people talk about that when they pull that card, but not in the first systems. In the first systems, it corresponded with Cancer. And
oh yeah, this is what we were talking about the other night, right?
Yeah, so it got even according to her, and she's got 3 books.
All right.
Right. And I don't ever take people's word for it. You always check your sources. Don't ever read a book and then just take the idea into your head because it's in a book. Because a lot of ideas get passed on through books without ever being challenged. But if you look at the references that she's talking about, Eliphas Levi, this society called the Brotherhood of the Hidden Light, that the original tarot.
She brought up names that resonated with you.
Yeah, the original tarot, like this, is the original correspondences, like the one that she has here. So Crowley's stuff, the Rider-Waite deck, all of that could possibly be not correct. Now, if that don't throw a monkey wrench into stuff, it throws a monkey wrench into it for me, is all I'm saying.
Okay. Did you feel hurt?
No, I didn't get emotional about it. No, I didn't get emotional about it because just learning that every time I learn something new, even if I don't have the answer, I'm still getting closer. I mean, that's what the show's all about. I never guaranteed or promised anybody that I would find all the answers.
See, that's the good thing. And stay open-minded.
Matter of fact, that's why it's called lighting the void. Because first we have to start figuring out how to ask the right questions. Like, here's a new question. Which one of these is right? Which one of these is more true based on the energies that they're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing to ask that question, but before we didn't know it. So now we have a bigger void and we've cast light on it. So once we fill that space and we start asking the right questions, then I think we'll get some answers, but we got to fill it up first. I was actually going to call the show Filling the Void, but that sounded kind of dirty. I thought people would make jokes about it, you know. But anyways.
I'm going to start another one. I'm going to branch off and call it Voiding the Light.
Voiding the Light. That's like causing darkness to happen, man. You know? But that sounds like a cool show. I'm not trying to say anything, but, you know, after I made Lighting the Void, there were a lot of other shows that started using that word void in it.
Mm-hmm.
You noticed that too, didn't you?
And then the one that took over the site.
Yeah.
Oh, the Fringe. Oh, yeah. That was
a different
nightmare. One. Yeah.
You know, you're getting somewhere, man. You know, you're getting somewhere when you hear people, you see people copying and you can't say anything about it because, you know, you're going to look like a jackass if you do, like I do right now, talking about it. But you know what's going on.
And they call it flattery.
Yeah. Or you hear people trying to sound like your show sounds with the music they play that they never did before, but all of a sudden they're doing now. But what they can't do is be who you are. So you can't worry about that stuff.
Nope.
God,
Plus, like I said before, it's like, you know, there's somebody out there for everybody. You know what I mean? And you can't always think that, you know, just because one person, you know, our audience listens to you, or I had never thought that my audience that listened to me, it's only listen to me. You know, I would want them to listen to, get other sources, get other information, you know. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're right. Jake is asking in the chat room, so are you talking about like the real Golden Dawn tarot? No, I have that tarot. I'm talking about the Kabbalistic correspondences that were there, the first astrological Kabbalistic correspondences that ever hit a tarot deck. Is not the same ones as the original Golden Dawn ones or the Crowley deck. There's a tarot if you can find it. I don't know how many of them are left, but it's called
Didn't Paul Foster case
his is Golden Dawn too.
Carry that one out. Yeah, it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean if you want to learn about the evolved system, then there's no better system than the Paul Foster case's Builders of the Adytum. But
right.
This one is called Tarot of the Holy Light. And every time Nish recommends something to me, it blows my mind what I learn. And it's not just the tarot that you got to get. It's the books that come with it. She wrote 3 books. One goes into the history, one goes into the underground and the alchemical stuff of Jacob Boehme. And then there's another book, which is super thick, that talks about each card. And she goes into how the Golden Dawn, how all of these people kind of changed the correspondences over time. It's almost like how they justified it, why they did it, but to her, it's all watered down. And I'm starting to agree with her a little bit. But then you'll find yourself in the minority, which kind of sucks. And even when I do different readings for myself, off this tarot deck, I get one thing. And the other tarot deck, I get another. But I am going to give you guys a recommendation to do, to let you know, try something here. Figure out whatever, if you're like me and you got a bunch of tarot decks, figure out the one that you like to read with the most. And I want you to try to prove to yourself that your higher self is speaking to you with a deck of cards, right? Like Kurt says, I don't know how you can talk to spirit through a deck of cards. Well, it's kind of when God makes up all of reality. I mean, anything can happen through a deck of cards. So instead of asking the future, all right, instead of doing the 3-card thing where you go past, present, future, or whatever, ask yourself, and as crazy as it sounds, talk to your higher self and say, what is it that I really want? What is it that I really desire? In other words, why am I sitting here about to pull a card? What do I really want to know? What do I really want first? And shuffle the deck really good and pull that card out. And then study the meaning of that card, not just what's on the, study the pictures, obviously, but the correspondences, what the real meaning of it is, the initiatic meaning of it, the path, all that stuff. And then you'll see it'll shock you every time. Every single time it's shocked me. And I did this experiment with a friend, and it happened to them too. Same thing. They were like, wow. And I said, then pull out a card and say, ask to get this thing that I want in my life. And when I say I want, my deepest soul desire, what type of energy should I be in? What do I need to do? And it'll tell you. And then you can use the 3rd card and say, what will the outcome be? And then it'll tell you. And it's freaky. I did it like 6 or 7 times. And each time it was damn near perfect. It started freaking me out. When you get really freaked out so much you get lightheaded a little bit, or at least I do.
No.
I do. It started freaking me out. So here's the thing, though. Based on all the history, the correspondences, and all that stuff I'm telling you about, I still ended up using just the plain old Rider-Waite deck when I did that. Knowing that this new one I got, the stuff is probably more accurate on it based on what the cards really mean and all that. But because I put my energy into this one so much, that this one works better for stuff like that. So as you say, Dan, everybody's different. It doesn't have to be blanketed stuff.
You went back to what resonated with you.
That's right.
So kind of like what your grandfather's going through, or he just hasn't gone back to coming to understand that he doesn't have to abandon his belief just because you come into a new understanding.
Jake, I always get the death card, always change in my world, always rebirth. Man, if you're constantly drawing the death card, then that means you're alchemizing
constantly changing.
Quick. Yeah. Usually you'll draw that card when a good change needs to happen. No matter how sucky the change is, it's something good for you that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're drawing that a lot, then you're probably on a good path, brother. It's scary, though.
Oh, yeah. Especially when the cards repeat.
Yeah.
Pay attention. Pay attention.
Yeah, so what I do, and I think I advise every one of you guys to, it's cool to collect tarot decks if you're doing things like scrying and studying initiation and getting into the story of it. But usually everybody's got, one deck that is kind of very reliable to them when they need help. And you'll usually find... Which one was yours?
The one that I made... It was Cyril Marchetti deck that I had made. Cool. I got the images off the net, and then I went and had them printed. And then I took the darn things and I lacquered them. I did 3 layers of lacquer on both sides, let them all dry, threw them in the oven, baked them up. It took me about 3 days to get it all together.
That's cool.
Get cut and prep them and everything like that. Clean them. Clear them, I should say. And then, and that was it. Until that fated day when I found out my 4 of cups was missing.
Oh, I hate that. I've had that happen to me before. One card's not there.
The deck is done. I'm like, damn. Yep. Got to initialize another deck then. Make that the one. Even though I have 5 decks. I forgot about it. 6. Yeah, about 6 decks.
They got
I like it.
They got,
what?
I just.
You like crystal balls?
I don't have one. I don't have one.
A friend of mine got one once, right? And he was playing around with it and doing the low light thing and everything. And he decided to get a little creative. So he heard from somewhere that if you point the laser into it, you start seeing things. So he started messing around with it. And I think his end goal was to point a red, green, and a blue into it in low light and see what was happening. But he started taking pictures of what was showing up in the crystal ball, and you could see images in the ball. Literally, like, they weren't like, they were like, it looked like, a snapshot, because it was red. He was showing me the red ones that he was doing, and it literally looked like a monochrome.
Well, I mean, that stuff's good for scrying, man. If you're you're really good at scrying, or you get into that, you can get into that trance state.
That's projecting.
That's perfect for it. I end up doing redneck stuff, man. I end up getting like a plate, a glass bowl with water or something. It's usually what I end up doing, because I don't really care so much about what it's made up of. Only because I'm on a budget. If I had all the money in the world, I'd have all kinds of magic stuff. Man, it'd be like a magic horror shop in here. But you got to adjust. We call it redneck magic sometimes. So if you want to get something to scry in, you can use water. That's what they used back in the day, anyways. Water, mirror. You can even use your cell phone if you want. Turn it off. Now you got a black mirror. But the best thing that triggers you, I think, if you can get that book and really, if you really want to get into scrying and learn how to do it and get really good at it, get a Tatwa deck. The Tatwas. I've said that a million times, so I'm sure I have. There's a whole initiatic system in there where you don't have to do anything. It's kind of like how David, or AKA Craven, does all of his spiritual work through dreams. You can do it all with scrying too. You don't have to do any of this other stuff. You just got to understand the systems. And when you look up that picture of the Rosicrucian Vault of Adepti, and you see those flashing colors inside that crazy geometry, of a vault just full of insane symbols, you'll also see that the colors flash. They purposefully put flashing colors on top of each other for a reason. And I'm thinking about doing a show on that one day, but I don't want to get too deep into that, why they do the flashing colors and stuff, but there's a process to all of this.
I hear you. At somewhere where there was, you ever pay attention to Truth Stream Media?
Truth Stream Media?
They found Truth Stream Media. I brought them up before. Anyway, they came across a flea market type thrift store where they found a bunch of old books. But the books that they found were pretty much like interesting in the fact that they were written by MK Ultra people who didn't know that they were doing MK Ultra people until several publications later. And one of them, I was trying to look it up. The particular book that they brought up, I couldn't find the PDF for. But one of them that they were doing was a complete study on that stuff, on how the flashing colors and the strobe effect can mess with your mind. It was about mind control and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but they were using it to get into different perceptions and developments and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, well, let's take a look at this.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten into it yet. I was busy with life.
Yeah.
But thought it was interesting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you take somebody that doesn't understand the effect of it, and you start throwing a bunch of flashing symbols and colors at them, man, it's like that movie Clockwork Orange, where they tie that dude up or kind of mount him to a chair and just show him all this crazy stuff and just put it in his mind, right? See, that's the thing about the initiatic process that I don't think people really understand. The reason why I'm attracted to this system is because you develop these things in a subtle way to where you learn about it. You learn all about it, the forces behind it, the energies behind it. You start with the elements, then the planets, then you go up to the zodiac, then the Sephiroth, and you work your way up. Because if you were to just jump into a vault and start doing a crazy ritual, your psyche can't really handle it. I mean,
no, yeah.
Think about the people, right? That the reason why the Kabbalists would tell people, you can't really study this stuff until you're 40 or whatever. The Jews tell people that. Well, that's because back in the day, they realized that when people started going into these meditations and invoking the name of God, that 4-letter name that the dude was talking about, right? The Tetragrammaton, and really getting involved with this stuff, they jump right in it. They had people that would just go crazy, man. They'd lose it. Their psyches couldn't handle it. Doesn't mean they didn't go there. It doesn't mean they didn't visit different planes of consciousness. They just couldn't handle it because their energetic makeup wasn't ready for it. Their psyche wasn't ready for it. It's a lot.
Right. It's a level of maturity. And sometimes it could just be a level of spiritual maturity too. So a coming to understand, things that come together. Edgar Cayce had said the same thing in a phrase that he termed the great work. There's usually people that are seeking don't really get involved with it until they're in their 40s. When this was back in the 20s, he said this, so think about 100 years ago. So, yeah, that's what he was saying back then.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt to do any research on it at all. I mean, if you're open-minded to it, now is a great time. No better time than the present.
Right. Well, if you look at the demographics of the show, I was looking at the demographics of this show, and it's weird, right? On the podcast versions, there's a lot of women that listen to the podcast. But the YouTube version, the live show, and the YouTube stream is almost 100% men. It's like 90% men between the ages of 28 and 50. And then it's like, if you looked at a line chart, it looks like a pyramid. People in their 20s don't really care about this stuff for some reason, their early 20s, for the most part. Not saying all of them. And then when people get older,
about the gram.
Yeah, they're not really listening anyway. So it's like I would say between like 30 and 50 is the majority, and it's mostly male. But the podcast is mostly female. I wonder why that is. It's strange. I gotta figure that out.
It's a different platform.
You got the answers to that? Really? You know why the girls are downloading and the guys are watching YouTube?
It's a different platform. It's a different medium. It's completely different. It's the people who are watching stuff are not listening, and the people who are listening are not watching.
I get what you're saying, but why is one female and one male? Do you understand that?
Well, look at the societal pivot. Okay, so what would they be watching? More than likely, it would women paying attention to YouTube, right? So the dominant viewership of women on YouTube would be what topics?
Hell, I don't know.
Home, child raising, makeup.
Be careful, Dan.
Self-help. No, I'm not. I'm serious. But if you look at it,
kitchen cooking, women stuff.
No. But yes, I mentioned self-help and stuff like that also. So, yeah. We don't do. Is it like we don't? Yeah, but we don't put it out there as a self-help, type of show. We just talk about the fringe. We're a lot deeper than that. A lot deeper than that. I think that was phrased wrong, but you get my point.
Yeah, because that's what I'm telling you. Be careful, because it sounds like, some women might take wrong what you're saying. Like, yeah, you know how the women are. Sure. They talk about cooking and self-help stuff. They That's why they
it's
download
on
the podcast.
YouTubes. What they're watching on the YouTubes is different than what they're watching on Instagram. What they're watching on Instagram is different than what they're watching on, say, LinkedIn. And what they're watching on LinkedIn is not the same thing that they're watching on TikTok. You know
what? I'm going to go out on a limb here and say I have no idea why that's happening. I'm not even going to try to understand it, but it makes me curious.
Why TikTok's happening?
No. Why?
Oh, okay.
Why? Like the question that we're talking about right now.
Oh.
Why 100% females download the podcast and 100% males watch YouTube? I can pretend like I know the answer to that, but I don't think I do. Not yet. But I'm going to learn it. I'll figure it out. But Friday, that's going to change. I can tell you for sure. Because the Night Stalker is going to be here. And this dude, I've been searching through his pictures, and we're going to do an auction. We're going to have a Valentine's night E-date bid for the Night Stalker to go on an E-date. Now, he's already tried to, pretty much tell me how things are going to go and what he wants to do, but it ain't going to work like that. It's going to be fun. We've already got pretty much what he's going to do with the date. We're going to make sure it's successful. All right. It's going to be really fun. And I already know some of the people that are going to bid on this boy, and I'm frankly a little jealous, to be honest with you. So the way we're going to do it is you're going to have to call in to bid. You can't bid from the chat room. You can't bid from email. We have to hear your voice, and you have to shout out a bid. And all of the proceeds are going to go to the Night Stalker's news studio and his new venture program into the news. He's hella passionate about this stuff, so I figured why not put him on the team, right? God knows I love passionate people, and he's one of them. But this is going to go off. This is serious, man. Like, I did this kind of for a, fun thing, right? Like, let's do it for fun. Let's laugh and maybe watch the Night Stalker blow a date or something, and then we can laugh later about how he screwed it all up. And that's not what's going on. It's getting serious.
So now it's serious fun.
Yeah. You've got some real interested suitors out there, brother. We may actually end up hooking up the Night Stalker with his new, you never know. It could be his future girl.
You never know.
His future ex-wife, right?
Dun, dun, dun. It could happen.
I'm excited about it. So I'm asking all of you to make sure that we get enough bids, because I think we only need like 4 or 5 people bidding, but if a whole bunch of people do, that's great. Because as soon as somebody loses out, we're going to hang up. Like, if people are bidding on line 2 and 4 and they're still going at it, but line 1 and 3, they're not bidding anymore, and people are trying to call in to bid, I'm going to drop them, So there's only going to be 4 actual people yelling, but they could be all different people. I still haven't found a good auctioneer yet, though. Do you know one, Dan? Somebody can do that auction stuff?
No, not offhand.
I'll probably figure it out. We'll figure it out, right?
Sure, of course.
Yeah, right, we'll figure it out. I've never done this before, man. I don't know even why I thought about even doing this. It just was something we talked about during the show, but it's turning into a big event.
It's a thing. Be there, be square.
If you think you're going to be alone on Valentine's night, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. You can actually win a date with the one and only Night Stalker. It's going to, not only that, I guarantee it's going to be a fun date. I've ensured you that the date is going to be fun and safe. Of course, it's safe. You guys are going to be miles apart, but still, you never know. It's the internet. It's going to be fun. It's going to be like no other. And it'll be the best Valentine's Day of your night or of your life. Or you can sit at home, sulk about how no one got you chocolates or flowers or anything like that. Watch your favorite flick. I don't know, watch Dirty Dancing or something and dream about your new love that might be in the future. Or you could just take advantage of it. We're going to start the bidding probably around 9:15, 9:20 p.m. So make sure that you get on the phone lines. I'll actually open the phone lines up early, so they'll be there. So if they fill up, I can't believe I'm saying this, but yeah, they're going to fill up.
Jake's going to start the bidding?
Who? Jake? Yeah, Jake can start the bidding.
I thought Jake was going to start the bidding.
Yeah, Jake can start the bidding.
I might have to counter myself.
Now, come on now. That wouldn't be fair to old Night Stalker. But it would be funny. But yeah, we might do this more often. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
Get this one over with.
Can we auction off to you first? Let's auction you off too. You want to? I might just do it all night. We might just start auctioning off just whoever wants a date. It's fun. But there is going to be like a way. We have to be able to check in and just at least check in and see what he's doing. And then we'll, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm excited. I kind of want to skip to Friday, but we can't. Tomorrow, Thomas Sheridan's going to come on, so we're really going to dig deep. It's the second time he's been on the show. He's going to talk about, well, I don't know. I might get into the esoteric and the symbolism and stuff of Valentine's, but he's always got something interesting to say. I mean, there's not another person on the planet that knows more about the past when it comes to paganism, the ancient gods, and religion and how everything came about. Very interesting guy. And then Andy Thomas is coming back from the truthagenda.org. And then Thursday night, we're actually going to have Tobias Lars back on the program. Mr. Fix Your Effing Shadow is going to be back. And that's going to be quite entertaining. That guy, he's like the Jack Nicklaus of occult, or I would say mystics. I love that guy. So yeah, he's going to be back. And then Friday night we'll do the auction. So if you don't participate, like, please just share it. Share the flyers.
Spread the word.
I put the flyers in on social media on the Fringe FM Facebook, also on Lighting the Void. I also drop them in the Fringe FM chat. Share them with as many people as you can. And oh man, I wish I would have prepared more for this, because it's going to be the biggest event ever that happened on Lighting the Void. Valentine's night 2020. You got anything to go out on, Dan, before we get out of here? Anything you want to say to the audience? Maybe that you're starting your show. Are you going to really start your show again, like tomorrow?
Just keep your iTunes or whatever you listen to pointed right here on the Fringe FM.
That's it.
The number one radio station for spiritual warriors, right here.
That's what I'm talking about. That's how you go out. Now, consider my playlist shut down. I'm just going to have to pick a song. I'm just going to have to play something, and we'll get out of here. Please don't copy the show without written permission. Music was by Chronox. I want to thank Don, Amanda, Eric, Mark, and Pacho. Who else I got to thank? Dan, our guest tonight. All of you guys in the Fringe FM chat. See you guys tomorrow night.